All right. Good evening and welcome to the Chaska City Council meeting, which will be virtual through ZOON for Monday, May 4th, 2020. We'll call the meeting to order at 7:04. I apologize. Our previous meeting ran a little late. We had to get reconnected. So before we start, I have to read some information here. So I'm going to start with that before we go into the rest of the agenda. Welcome, everyone. As you can probably tell, this meeting looks a little different than normal due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are holding our meeting via video teleconference because the City Council has declared a local emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic. State statutes allows us to hold our City Council and Commission meetings remotely. While we aren't meeting in person, we want to make sure that the public can participate in our meetings. If you have joined the Zoom meeting, you will notice that you can't unmute yourself. We have a moderator on the call who will unmute those who wish to speak during the public comment portions of the meeting. As is typically the case, public comments will be reserved for the visitor presentation or public hearings. A public hearing is on the agenda tonight, so public comments will be allowed during visitor presentation and the public hearing. Once we reach those parts of the agenda, I will ask if there are any public comments. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by computer or tablet, please click on the raise your hand icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Once your hand is raised, the moderator will announce your name and phone number and unmute your line. Please remember that public comment is provided at the discretion of the council and is meant to provide productive discourse on topics related to the city of Chaska. Speakers shall refrain from comment or behavior that is deemed disorderly, derogatory, obscene, indecent, or off topic. Any person engaging in such speech or action may be muted or removed from the meeting. Those of you watching online or on Comcast Channel 15, please be aware of the following. Some of our city council members, city staff, and presenters are participating in this meeting remotely. There is a delay between the live meeting to the online and cable broadcast. All council actions will be taken by a roll call vote. We are working hard to make sure that your voice can be heard while protecting everyone's health and safety. Thank you for your patience and constructive feedback as we work through this unprecedented situation. All right, with that, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm so worried I'd get confused and get the wrong words. Usually you got the whole group here and you could do that, but when it's just the three of us here, it's kind of scary. So far I haven't had that happen yet. But all right, with that, Nate, will you call roll, please?
Yes, Councilmember Hatfield.
Here.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Here.
Councilmember Wong.
Here.
Councilmember Grau.
Here.
Mayor Winchell.
Here. Next is item 4, adopting the agenda. Are there corrections or additions to the agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, I got a motion by Councilmember Hatfield, I think second by Councilmember Wong. Is that correct? Both shaking your head? Okay. Discussion. Hearing none. All right, I'll just call it. Is that how we want to do that, Nate? You want me to just call? Is that the easiest?
That's fine. Either way, whatever you prefer.
All right, I'll just kind of go how they're on my screen. So, Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong?
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Grau?
Yes.
And Mayor Winchell, yes. All right, moves us to visitor presentation. Is there anyone here that would like to speak at visitor presentation?
Yeah, Mayor, no one for visitor presentation, because I believe, Chris, you are calling in for the public hearing, correct? Yeah.
Okay, I see.
So at that time, you can raise your hand at that time and comment then.
All right, so we'll go past visitor presentation. Approve previous meeting minutes. Again, if there are no corrections or additions, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes.
Motion by Councilmember Hubbard,
Second by Councilmember Grau.
second by Councilmember Grau. Discussion. Hearing none, I'll call roll call. Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong,
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Grau,
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, yes. All right, moves us to item 7, consent agenda. Again, these are items that need our approval, not necessarily conversation, but any item can be pulled off and discussed if it feels necessary. And again, with that, I am looking for if there is a motion or if there is any discussion.
Motion by Wong to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Wong. Second by,
Second by Hubbard. Oh, or
second by Councilmember Hubbard. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield.
yes.
Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, yes. All right, moves us to item 8A, adopt resolution 2020-33, public assessment hearing for the 2020 downtown street and utility construction.
Mayor and Councilmember, the you tonight is the proposed area for reconstruction in our downtown area for the 2020 construction season. As you're aware, this is downtown. The reconstruction of our downtown streets is something that's been going on for about 10 years now. Was a program that was adopted back in the 2010-2011 time period. And since that time, we've been taking chunks of the downtown to reconstruct with the goal of having every street in downtown reconstructed within about a 10 to 12 year period. Right now, we're about, if this section were to go forward, after this project, we'd have about 80% of the streets in downtown reconstructed. And I think it's important to point out that it's not just the actual street being reconstructed, which those streets have been in place for a very, very long time, and probably arguable whether they were actual streets to begin with or just blacktop that's been added year over year. But it's also a real important one from a standpoint of utility replacement through this area. The utilities in our downtown area are quite old and are in need of replacement. The other thing our downtown area has not had in the past is an actual stormwater system. And so as we've been completing these projects, and we've generally been moving from south to north, have been adding in stormwater capture into these projects, which has been a big enhancement both for water quality, but also for pulling the water off the streets themselves. Matt Clark, our city engineer, is here to talk a little bit about the project from a process perspective. Tonight is, we've been through a number of meetings already with this street improvement project. We've called for the public improvements to the plans to be done. We've called for actually having a public hearing to approve the public improvements that are being proposed. This stage of the process is the actual assessment hearing. So this basically gets into any responsibility that would be on the adjoining property owners for the project that is being proposed. You'll see with the presentation Matt's put together that what's being proposed this year is basically identical to what's been proposed throughout the rest of the downtown over the project time period over the last 10 years. We structure having the assessment hearing at the beginning of the project to see if there's any major issues that pop up during the assessment hearing, like a number of appeals that might come out during the process. The way the state statute process works is that an individual, if they are thinking about appealing, they do, by this meeting today, have to submit into the city in writing just a simple document that indicates that they're considering appealing. And that basically preserves their right to appeal for a 30-day period. Within that 30-day period, they have to take action on that. If they don't take action within that 30-day period, then the assessment goes into place. If they do, then they have to do that through a court process, which starts that process up. Part of emails that you got today, we do have 3 individuals who have put something in writing. One of them in particular was more of a concern or question I think we're going to be able to answer tonight, and the 2 were more structured as actual appeal letters to preserve their right to appeal on that. So what we'll hear tonight is it's a public hearing for the assessment, so Matt can give a presentation of the project. We open it up to get any comments that people may have. Procedurally, we need to make sure that we receive something in writing, and because we're virtual, the indication that we gave to the residents is that things had to be postmarked by today if they were to send it in. And so if we receive something after the fact, tomorrow, if it was postmarked by today, we'd let you know. But we actually don't award the actual project until we've actually gone through and made sure we know exactly how many appeals are out there. And it's mainly just to make sure that we don't take too much risk on a project if there was a number of appeals and it concerned us financially that way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he can go through the proposed project itself.
There. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thanks. Mayor, City Council, Matt Clark, Chaska City Engineer. Good to see everybody back again. I'm going to take us back a little bit in time, just for the sake of folks who may or may not have been able to listen and be involved in some of the process where we've been. Hard to believe that it's been over 2 months since the last time we talked about this project, but here we are today. Tonight we're talking about the assessments. Pretty familiar with the map. We'll go through just the individual components of the projects and then kind of talk through schedules and assessments and how the city goes through that process. So pretty familiar map that everybody's seen here. Over the last 9 years in downtown, as Matt mentioned, we've done approximately we've completed about 2/3 of the streets that have been programmed in downtown. Streets in gray are those that are finished. Yellow are those that remain for future years. And then the red and the orange or the pink being those that we've selected for this year. Just talking through the specifics of each street. Individually, the block of Beach Street between 5th and 4th, Stoughton Avenue from 5th to 6th, the block of Willow Street that's to the east of Stoughton Avenue, 6th Street, the block of 6th Street and the block of 7th Street found in between Bolt and Stoughton, as well as the block of Bolt between 7th and 6th. One of the big drivers, Council will remember, behind the timing and the selection of this year's streets is really state bridge funds that the city has received to replace the bridge. We refer to it as the Beach Street Bridge near the courthouse facility. One of the things Matt touched on was, the underground work and the utilities. Again, I'm going to kind of give some of the cliff notes as to each one of these streets, but the major components that Matt that we talked about go through is the streets, beneath the streets what will be replaced is sanitary sewer, the water main, all new storm sewer, sanitary and sewer water service upgrades, as well as full depth street reconstruction, sidewalks and trail. Just going through those individually by exhibits. Beach Street, again, all new sanitary sewer along the block between Beach and 5th. All new individual water services for property owners, and as well as a trunk water main upgrade that is programmed along Beach Street up, including Stoughton up to 6th. Stoughton Avenue, and we'll touch base on this a little later, is back in 1996, there were improvements that happened to Stoughton Avenue. Only selective improvements were made to the underground utilities. Portions of the sanitary sewer were upgraded. There were no water main upgrades that occurred as part of that project. But with this year's project, each of the individual property owners will receive all new sanitary sewer service upgrades from the main that's in the street up to the right-of-way, which is consistent with all the other properties. And I'll talk just quickly on the residential streets. Willow Street, again, all new sanitary sewer, all new water main, individual water services, again, would be upgraded from the right-of-way out to the street. The block of 6th and 7th, because all of the residential properties this year that are being assessed with this year's project, those properties, utilities do front out onto blocks of 6th and 7th. Again, all new sanitary sewer, new water main, new individual water services. Talking through some of the streets, the biggest change on this year's project, and again, we'll just go through the streets individually. The block of Beach Street between 4th and 5th. Again, the major change that's being imposed or proposed this year is that the on-street parking that's on the east side of Beach Street would be removed for driver safety and for access coming into and out of the government center. On-street parking would exist on the residential side between 4th and 5th, which exists today. Moving north, as we extend up Stoughton, the general footprint of the roadway is not changing. Again, just simply because of the restrictions in right-of-way and where the road is today. Along those two particular blocks, all new concrete sidewalks would be proposed or would be installed along both blocks of Beach, as well as only on the east side of Stoughton Avenue where it exists today. Talking through Willow Street, again, what we had proposed with this individual block is a standard residential street section. The right-of-way that does exist along the block of Willow Street is very tight, but still meeting that on-street parking requirement for those residents with the 32-foot wide residential standard street section is what would be put back. Going through the other remaining residential streets, talk about some uniqueness and how we've kind of developed the overall streets. Again, this year's project, as we went through the public process and going through the public improvement hearing and neighborhood feedback, there was a lot of discussion that evolved around 6th Street and Bull Street. And part of the issue that exists along both streets is there's very narrow restrictive right-of-way, and putting back a street section while still providing parking is not an option. And as we went through kind of the neighborhood feedback, we very quickly have now reverted to what is being proposed as a one-way street. The street width design has not changed from what we had originally proposed, which is standard 22-foot wide street. What it does allow for in a one-way is to have and provide on-street parking for all of the property owners along 6th. Knowingly that 6th Street is proposed as a one-way, again, Old Street would follow suit, simply in terms of access for those property along 6th Street to use Bold Street as their primary access. Again, same street width design as what's proposed along 6th Street, 22-foot wide driving surface. However, there would be, in the end, there would be approximately a 9-foot parking lane with approximately a 13-foot driveway. And what that does is it really allows those folks along 6th Street to have parking as well as any overflow parking that would be occurred along Old Street. As part of the, well, we can talk about the trail shortly. I'm just going to move to 7th Street quickly. Again, 7th Street using a very similar model to what we had talked about on Willow Street is to provide that standard residential street section that provides on-street parking. The change being on 7th Street is that there would be sidewalks that would be installed along the front of the residential properties, which would really follow the same fabric as our standard residential streets in downtown. So that is, again, one of the changes with this year's project. Sidewalks do not exist along Willow Street, 6th Street, and 7th. The only block that sidewalks would be placed back is along 7th Street. As part of the downtown master plan, one of the things that we talked through or was looked at pretty heavily is connections to the regional trail or to the levee trail system, and how to make those connections actually occur. Willow Street, because of its restricted width and providing the on-street parking, does not allow for a pedestrian connection. And part of the outcome of what it is that was explored and is being proposed as part of the design is to provide a link or a trail link that ultimately will serve a neighborhood connection not only for those neighborhood or those surrounding neighborhoods, but also to the regional trail along Stoughton Avenue, providing that connection that currently folks, there is no trail, there is no sidewalk connecting along Old Street, and again, a trail that Public Works or that the city would maintain long-term as a part of its overall levee trail and public trail system. Again, like Matt had mentioned, storm sewer upgrades are being proposed with this year's project. New treatment systems will be installed at the connection points into the East Creek, as well as upgrades, again, because all of the streets, with the exception of Beach and Stoughton, storm sewer does not exist. And so with this year's project and those streets being upgraded via Willow, 6th Street, 7th Street, and Old Street, it really allows the city the opportunity, because the streets are being urbanized and providing curb and gutter, that we're able to capture it and basically treat to the maximum extent we can with the storm sewer that's being proposed with the project. Quickly, we'll just talk through schedule. Again, where we've at, where we've been, and where we're at today. Back in January, late January, is when council was first shown the feasibility study for this overall project. Mid-February is when staff went through and really tried to engage the neighborhoods. Got a lot of feedback from property owners. March 2nd is when we held the public improvement hearing. And where we're at today is the May 4th public assessment hearing. If the project does continue to move forward, where we would see potentially awarding a construction project is sometime in the May timeframe with a pending June construction time. Any questions before we talk about project costs? Things that were included on this year's project. I hope that was just a quick reminder.
Any questions? Anyone, any questions for Matt? Okay. Apparently not. I can't see anybody, so if they're nodding, once you have your shared screen, I lose all the faces, so.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the project costs again when at the public improvement hearing, what was shared in terms of street costs, storm sewer, water main, water services, all of the components that were included in terms of the overall project, as well as the bridge. Total project costs of this year, again, are $4 million estimated at $4,437,327 as included in the feasibility report. And again, that's comprised of all of the streets, all the utilities, and all of the underground and full depth street reconstruction for those streets we just talked about. As I mentioned, and Matt mentioned before, tonight is the public assessment hearing for this year's downtown streets. Each year we put together what's called our downtown street assessment map. The map was shared in the staff report, but really the opportunity tonight is to walk through and go through any questions on the assessments that council has that are being proposed for this year. So generally, just to remind council, the city's practice for establishing assessments with projects in downtown is to conduct what's called a special benefit consultation. The consultation is performed by an independent appraisal group. What that does is it analyzes the benefit to the individual properties based on the proposed improvements within the overall project area. The amount that's determined in the consultation is what the city uses to establish each of the individual properties' assessments. Reflection of what it is that the outcome of the special assessment consultation is shown in yellow for those properties that were identified as benefiting in this year's downtown improvements. So that's probably the biggest takeaway is the properties in yellow are those that were included in the consultation as benefiting. The next step from there is what it is the special benefit amounts that are determined. This year, again, no different than what we have experienced in the last 10 years in downtown, even going back further, is that standard residential benefit to a residential property is $7,500. And that has, like I said, been consistent for the last 10 years. There were 3 properties that were evaluated as unique or potential for a higher benefit. And going through those just quickly, 523 4th Street, that is listed, the property is listed as a apartment unit. According to the appraisal methodology that's used as with the special benefit analysis is that those properties received a higher benefit, which again, you can see the amount in the assessment being reflected as different. There were 2 properties that were noted as a potential for a future lot split. Those properties are at 620 West, 620 Willow Street and 634 6th Street. Because the special benefit is not an appraisal, those which, again, an appraisal would identify the physical possibility or even planning and zoning permissibility as to whether or not what the restrictions are over the property, a host of things that go into that process. What staff is proposing is that these 2 residential properties are treated no different than any of the other residential properties on the project, and assuming the same benefit as $7,500 on each. So that kind of takes us to what the special benefit analysis outlined, what the amounts were. The next step is there are numbers that I want to talk through in terms of those properties that are along Stoughton Avenue. Like I mentioned before, back in 1996, the city did do a public improvement project along Stoughton Avenue. Policy that was used in terms of assessments for those properties, the city does not use as we've continued the downtown street reconstruction. What it is that was outlined in the special benefit analysis for, like I mentioned before, is all of the properties that are in yellow the benefit analysis concluded that there was a $7,500 amount. The difference being, and what staff is recommending, is that those properties, although they benefit the same amount as residential properties, that the assessments that were imposed previously, that those properties would be credited. The amounts of those previous assessments are shown on the special assessment map. And again, go through kind of individual case scenarios, but for example, 700 Stoughton, prior assessment of $4,231, reducing that from the $7,500 amount. And what staff is recommending is that that final assessment amount would be $3,269. Again, totaling the same amount, but just essentially recognizing that those properties would receive credit for the previous assessment. Any questions on how this year's assessments are structured?
I just had a couple quick clarification question.
Sure.
The property on Stoughton 600 their assessment is different even though their 96 assessment was the same. Why is that?
Do I have my cursor on the right?
Yeah. I'm just curious.
So you're referring to why were they assessed $4,231 versus $1,592 or a different amount?
I think the question is why are all those properties assessed the same amount back when, and like 700 has a 3269 amount and 600 has a 2519.
Yeah, that would be right. Like it looks like the magic number is 7,500, but that doesn't equal that. So I just am curious, like them and on the other corner, 612 is the same scenario there.
Matt,
Yes.
I don't know if it matters, but they're on the two corners of 7th and 6th Street. The rest of them all are the 3269.
So part of what those two properties, because, and I can go back and just double check, because of those two properties, I need to check in and make sure that I believe that their sewer and water services are not being upgraded. However, the benefit analysis did conclude that they would receive a $7,500 benefit. What we had done as a part of it is truly credit the project amount of, because their sewer and water services are not being replaced, that they would be credited for that portion.
So they'd be credited both for what they paid in the last project plus not getting a new sewer service line.
Correct.
Yep.
Oh, I just was curious. Not that I want to have them pay more money. I just was curious why they were different than everybody else. So.
Yes.
So Matt, are all the homes on Stoughton, say the 601, 609, 615, are they being assessed, or are you just showing what they paid when Stoughton was done the first time through?
It was really, the intent with the exhibit was to make sure that when there's a representative of what it is that the amounts that were assessed previously, the red numbers are essentially what's being proposed for assessments with this year's project.
I think your question is why are there white parcels and why are there yellow parcels?
Yeah, the white,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the white ones don't benefit directly from this particular project, so they're not being assessed.
Okay.
But it shows it shows that they paid back.
that they
their
paid
time.
that,
Yep.
okay. I was thinking that, but I just needed,
No, it's tough to do via Zoom.
okay.
Yep.
All right, anyone else from council? And again, we have seen this stuff, assessment materials before, so,
One thing I do want to point out real quick is, so you did, Matt Clark had got over to you this afternoon, the 3 assessment appeals we received in writing. I'll point out that the one from 520 Stoughton Avenue, the main concern that they brought up in that one was asking about the past project and why they're having to pay again. I think by virtue of the fact that we took in consideration the amount that we assessed in the past and credit it towards the project, I think that addresses that individual's concern. In essence, it's saying that they're not having to pay twice for the same thing. They're paying $7,500 total between the 2 projects. So I think that one addresses that. I don't want to speak for them, but that's what I sort of read in the letter. And the other 2, truly would be more of just preserving their rights to be able to appeal, which basically they have to put it in writing, and then they'd have 30 days to file something with the court if they decide that they actually wanted to appeal this.
10 days, I think, is the statute for when they have to physically file.
10 days?
With
Okay.
the district court, and then the action item after that is 30 days from the assessment hearing of when that action needs to be opposed.
And keep in mind the one thing that when the courts are looking at an appeal of an assessment, they're really looking at, this benefit analysis and saying, did this property truly get that benefit? I don't know that these letters are necessarily saying that that they're not receiving that benefit. I think their question is more on timing of the project.
So I think one thing, and I'll wrap up kind of my piece of it. Every year, one thing we need to do is essentially go through the terms, the assessment terms of what's being proposed for this year. Because of where we're at today, with COVID-19, one of the things that staff is recommending is that instead of having a 15-year term period for those assessments, which has been standard on all of the projects in downtown, is that we move to a 16-year term. What staff had looked into is what it is that the opportunities were in terms of deferments of interest, and what we did find is that essentially we're not able to defer assessments entirely. One of the opportunities, though, is to essentially extend the term by a year, and then also reduce the principal amount in payment for what each of the property owners would pay in their first year payment period. We're not able to defer what it is that the interest accrual is of the total assessment amount, but what we can do is shift that principal payment, like I mentioned, to that 1 year.
I think it's important to point out that where we started with this was looking at whether we could just defer the first year altogether and not start until taxes payable 2022 to actually have that first payment. And after looking at state statute does not allow cities to do that. The best we can do is we can defer interest plus $1 of principal. And so in essence, we did, since we could only accomplish the interest plus $1 in principal, we said, well, we can help mitigate that by adding an additional year onto the assessment. So in essence, what it does is it in essence knocks down their payment in the first year by about half. just wanted to give you a sense of how we came up to that, why we did. We started trying to defer everything, but statute would only allow us to go this far.
Yeah, so I'll just go over quickly the terms of the assessments as they were sent out and as they were mailed to the property owners. Like Matt had mentioned, payments would extend over a 16-year period. The first year's payment consists of amortized interest over the total assessment amount with $1 principal from the date of the adoption. Payments are no different in the past, as payments are due, excuse me, let me step back, as all of any payments beyond the first year would be amortized with interest equally over the life of the assessment, so that 15-year period, if they do carry through. Payments are due on or before January 2021 with an interest accrual of 5.5%. Residents who would like to pay the full assessments without interest have that option. There's a 30-day period following the adoption of the assessment hearing to where those folks can make arrangements with our finance group, come in and make those full payment amounts. After the 30-day period, the interest will accrue over the assessment period. Residents who do wish to pay off the assessment prior to being certified, every year there's a cutoff period for us for when we do have to certify with Carver County, so that it goes on the next year's tax return. They must do so by November 13th. It's a lot of information to go through. What staff does is, after an action item like this is taken, is that we send out a mailer that again outlines the payment, prepayment informations, and then there's a project contact and a primary contact for who it is and how that administration happens for payment.
And just to point out, at least I've received one email from an individual indicating that they plan on prepaying the whole amount. So that's not uncommon to see in these projects, especially when we've had, this is the 10th year of our project, and so people have sort of progressively seen us working across the downtown. So I think most people have known that this is coming for some time. And so with that, a lot of times you'll have people that, will just save up over that time and then just pay all at once so that they don't have to pay any interest with that. So that's one of the advantages of having the project later in this process, is they've been able to see this is coming for the last 10 years. One other thing I'll point out is that we did get our bids back, which we're not having you consider those today, but the bids were good and actually came in under the engineer's estimate. So that's a positive in the project. Especially since if you consider the assessments only cover, Matt, is it, of the total project cost, the assessments cover, 7%, 8% of the project costs. If you look at the street components, they cover a little over 20%, which is a statutory requirement that in order to bond for this, we have to at least assess 20% of the street costs.
Correct.
But this 7,500 has been the same since we started.
It's been the same.
Since year
It's
one.
actually, the first project that we had the $7,500 amount was down on First Street.
2004.
And that was in 2004. So we actually did First Street in 2004, and then we didn't have another downtown project till we restarted the program in 2010 or 11, whatever that was. Yeah.
So. All right, questions? Any more questions from the council at all?
Yeah, question. So let me paraphrase the understanding of the financing options. So the first option is for a homeowner could basically pay off in a 15-year period, making payments of interest and principal as you would any other loan payment. Right?
Actually, it's 16 years of, first year would be interest and $1 principal, then it'd be 15 years of interest and principal after that.
Yeah, okay, so the first year effectively is the $1 principal and then just the interest.
Yep.
Yep. Then the second option is to pay everything in full, where they don't accrue any interest, but that has to be done by the beginning of next year.
That has to be done within, is it 30 days?
30 days.
Yeah.
November?
Or 30 days, sorry.
Yep, there's a 30-day period for any property owner that would like to pay off the assessment, no interest. There's a 30-day period from, essentially, if the project moves forward, it would be 30 days from tonight or tomorrow, where there'd be no interest.
So reading the letters from the homeowners, the concern seems to be like the period of time, this 30 days comes at a very awkward time, with everything going on. Is there an option for homeowners to, be able to, do they extend that 30-day window or to, make allowances given the fact that, some people want to, just be done with it and not have to pay against that 15 years of interest?
We could wait until November 15th. It would be is it November 13th? There's a date that we have to certify it to the county, and at that point it becomes official. The two things I'll mention with that, we can do that. It's inconsistent with how we've done that with past projects, so we'd be giving a different benefit to these homeowners than we've provided to others. And that's fine if we say this time is a little bit different. We certainly can do that, but the other thing to recognize is that once we start the project, our costs start accruing. That's why we do a 30-day period at the beginning, is because we haven't really incurred any cost until that project starts. And so the theory behind it is that it allows the public to remain whole with their dollars and make sure that once we actually start spending money, that we're actually accounting for the fact that there's interest that we're paying on financing and stuff. So can occur, yes, but I just wanted to make sure to point out those two things.
So what I'm hearing is that means that if we extend it to November, the city has to pay the interest during that period.
Yes.
Gotcha. Which is why that date's 30 days. So now, what's the percentage of homeowners who have paid in full? Just given the history of the project so far.
I'd say pretty high. I don't know, Matt. 40%.
I don't want to characterize. We've been doing this for a long, long time. I think there's different parts of downtown. There's rentals, there's home ownership, and this year's project is really a lot of property owners that have been there a long time. So 50% would be kind of maybe a rough guess.
Well, how much? So if we assume 50%, let's say, how much money are we talking about for interest if we have to cover the interest between 30 days from now until we start accruing costs until November, if we had that as an option?
Boy, I couldn't get it right off the top of my head.
That's such a moving target, I think.
Yeah, because it sort of depends on how much money you expend in each of the payments going out. It's not let's put it this way, it wouldn't be a devastating amount. I only wanted to point out that it's inconsistent with how we've done it before, and it'd be a different benefit we'd be providing to these residents.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked is because, knowing the situation with everything going on with the pandemic, I don't know how many residents in this particular area are impacted through, unemployment, loss of jobs, being furloughed, things like that are, happening. And it's kind of like, it's almost like the worst time this could be hitting too, especially for those who, in principle, as a matter of course of the way that they would do business normally, are not able to pay that off as they normally would. So, I kind of look at this as a very extenuating circumstance in that regard. So that's why I'm asking.
Yep.
I will commend the city for thinking about the fact that going to 16 years is for 15. I think that's unique in itself, and I do appreciate that. I guess it's not something that was on my radar, but I'm glad it was on your guys' radar to see what the options were to try to get through this year at least. Now, I hear your point, Councilman Thornway, about the paying off piece. you can't do anything about it, and you're right, it is kind of the middle of the unknown right now, and so I appreciate your commentary as well.
Can I ask a question, Matt? Maybe I'm not understanding this correctly. Is there just two options in the sense of they either can pay it in whole in that 30 days or they have to keep making payments? Is there a penalty to pay?
Yeah, so the real third option is that they could at any point in time pay off the entire amount at a given time. What they can't do is they can't partially pay, like they either, once they get into the assessment, they either have to make the payment that is provided for them that year or pay off the whole assessment altogether. So there is a way for them to avoid the interest going into the future. Now they might pay some to get to that point, but we don't allow partial payments that are beyond the actual assessment amount. So just like your mortgage payment, I mean, there's a mortgage payment you pay, you know, you have that payment or you can pay it off in full. So you could have some people that may say, I'll pay the first year of the assessment like I'm doing this, and then maybe they're in a different situation next year and then they just decide to pay it all off at that point.
Okay. That was my big concern, because, you know, right now, if anybody's unemployed, they're gonna wanna hold on to as much of their, you know, savings or cash, you know, but because this is, you know, stretched out, is this something where if things become more stable, hopefully sooner rather than later, then they can resume and then not have to pay as much interest over time, so.
And that was sort of our hope by coming up with a plan like this is, you know, to allow a project to go forward, because with this, especially in streets in this area, I mean, the utilities are terrible, the roads are terrible. You know, the project itself represents jobs. And, you know, how do we keep it going but not put it in a position where, you know, if they stabilized a year from now, they'd have that ability to pay it off if they wanted to at that point too.
Just a quick clarification on that. So if a homeowner chose the option 3 and said, I'll start making payments because right now things are rough, and then chose to pay it off in full at a later date, would that be in full with the remaining interest or without the remaining interest?
It'd be with the interest that accrued till that date.
Until that point. So that means that they had accrued interest at that point, but they've been making payments on it. Any future interest, they would not have to pay.
Exactly.
Okay.
The interest they're paying, though, is based to the end of the year in which the so they don't, the interest doesn't stop on the date that they make the payment.
That's a good point,
this
is looked at it, and we have to certify this with the county in chunks of years. And so, you know, if they pay it in 2020, the interest is calculated till the end of that year. So they'd still have to pay the interest for that year, but they wouldn't have future years.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's an option without us doing anything. That's just built into this.
Yep.
Okay.
For anyone that was listening, that was our city attorney that just talked. I don't think he's got a camera on him because of how we're.
We didn't want to break a
situated.
lens tonight.
Yeah.
The other thing that they may want to say is probably not in the best interest of the city. They may want to talk to their local banker, because it's my understanding mortgages, you can, depending upon your equity you have in your house, you can get it for 3% or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's options that
Right.
people have when they look at that. But it's you know, I will say it's not uncommon for us to see prepayment. One of the reasons that we also, you know, have that 30-day period and try to have a better understanding about who's going to prepay at the beginning is because ultimately we go out and we bond for this at the end, you know, probably the end of the summer. And the last thing we want to do is bond for things that are prepaid, because now we're stuck with that interest payment for things that we would have been able to reduce the amount that we actually bonded for. And so you end up paying interest on something you didn't really need. And so that's one of the reasons we sort of put these things in place, is to create some predictability on how much we actually need to bond for. Now, again, 1 or 2 homes is not going to be a devastating amount, but that's I mean, it's the rationale for why we try to put these processes in place.
So if it's something where, like, November seems like it's late because of the bonding period, is there some like happy medium to buy a little more time for some homeowners to be able to make that decision?
Yeah, I think as long as we're making sure that it's certified to the county. Now, correct me, Matt or Luke, if I'm wrong, but as long as we certify it to the county by the middle of November, end of November, that's the amount that's going to go on their assessment. So, so yeah, we could pick some date in between. You know, typically we try to go in that, you know, August timeframe. I can't guarantee when we're going to actually go out to bond for this because we try to put projects together. But certainly the sooner we know if somebody's going to prepay, the better, because, you know, let's say a project cost $100 and somebody, you know, we ended up getting $75 of prepayments, but we went out and bonded for $100. Well, we're paying interest on that $25 that we didn't really need.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that, you know, the way I look at this is like, because this is an unusual time, you know, and so I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for those homeowners who may be impacted, and out of principle trying to make those trying to do this early and not have to make those interest payments.
And Mike, just to put a little history in, I get it, and I understand the financial burdens of this, but we went through the whole downturn in the economy in 2010 all the way up to 2015, and you know, we were able to go through that. And while, like I said, I get this is crazy times, we don't know, you know, I don't know, will it end? But we didn't know when the economy was going to change the last time. You know, and we were able to work our way through it. And I think this is a good workaround by adding another year. And, you know, obviously we were going to try to defer the whole first year, but state statute doesn't allow it. So I think we've been trying to really work with them the best that we can. And I mean, even, you know, because in all likelihood, if something happened and we didn't do it, we were going to do it next year. So it's just we've got these projects on the line. We've got some federal money for the bridge. So it's kind of one of these, it's best for us to move forward just because we have, that's helping out on the project with some of the federal money. But like I said, I understand it. And again, you know, we've heard from some residents, I've known this is gonna happen for 8 years, I've been putting money away and so I'm not sure where you're thinking or where you're going. But I just kind of wanted to give that as well.
You know, I appreciate your comments on it. I mean, I think that where I'm going with it is, you know, I think from whether or not we do the whole project now, I mean, to me, that's tied with those federal funds for the bridge reconstruction, right? So those are things that if we pass this, we're not getting that money back. And there's a lot of other things that are already built around this. And this is really kind of more of like that small piece of how to accommodate those homeowners who do want to do the pay in full and are maybe struggling to do that because of the economic situation. So this is just that one small piece of this. That's what I'm looking at specifically. I think that 1 year with $1 of principal helps all the other homeowners in this area. So I'm just kind of looking at that one piece to say, for those who want to pay in full, can we give them a little more flexibility there? That's all.
I don't know, is there a way to know if there's people that are in that situation?
Well, I mean, to me, it's a question of whether, either do it or you don't. I mean, that's,
right.
The only thing I bring up is I always just like to help you guys understand the whys behind why we do it. And I agree with you. I mean, this is a very unique circumstances, but I also want to make sure I point out when it's not consistent with how we've done things in the past because, but quite frankly, the interest only plus dollar principal is not how we've normally done it
right.
either. But I always want to make sure that you guys are aware when we do something inconsistent, because those
Come back and get-
tend to be the ones that come back and bite you. So I just want to at least make people aware of that. Now, whether we do it, yeah, sure, we can do it, and if that's a direction people want to go, that's fine, but I just want to make sure that I point that out. I would suggest, being a public hearing, I would actually suggest getting anybody's comments first before continuing that discussion.
Right.
Are you guys ready to open up for public comment?
Well, I was just gonna ask that. Any other questions from the council? I'm not hearing anything, so I'm assuming, again, like I said, I can't see faces, so if you're nodding, I'm assuming that that's the case. So, we're gonna go ahead then, and let's go ahead and open the public, assessment hearing at 8:04. So Matt, or Kevin, if you would, unmute or tell me who's first.
Yep, we have Chris first here, and I'm muting her now.
Okay. Good evening, Chris. Welcome.
Hold on a second. There we go.
Can we put take the screen share off so that we can see faces again?
Yep.
Perfect.
Awesome, thank you.
There's Chris. Hello, Chris. Good evening.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
Matt, step away 1 second.
Oh, do we need to wait?
What's that? What do
Do
you
we
say?
need to wait for Matt?
Looks like Matt's not gonna make it.
Oh,
Hey, if you gotta go, you gotta
Yeah,
go.
looks like Matt had a little emergency. No, you can go ahead.
Okay, so we're at 747 East 7th Street, and so from our perspective, we have a good view of the traffic, or rather the lack thereof, on both 6th Street and Bolt from our yard and our window. And in the time that we've lived here, which is January 2004, we've observed very light traffic on both streets. And even though pedestrians, including ourselves, do use Bolt to access the trail, we've never observed or experienced any significant contention between the foot and the auto traffic. So the proposed one-way on 6th and Bolt, plus the curb and the path to the trail on Bolt, although it's a nice, elegant solution, it seems to address a problem that doesn't actually exist. So while we're grateful that this project doesn't bring an assessment to our property, in this time of unprecedented economic decline and extreme uncertainty, we believe these specific projects don't merit spending the money. Why assess these affected residents unnecessarily? Why not simply repave the street and leave it at that? And I guess the biggest question that we've had all along is, why is the city stating that this specific area of enhancement is a need when it's clearly a want? And we do have one other question, but go ahead and we'll take it in two pieces.
well, I'll start without having engineer knowledge of great need, but these streets are in really, really bad shape. I lived at 606 Stoughton for a lot of years. They were bad back in there, and that was 25 years ago. And these streets have not had any kind of work done to them. So it's just following the whole system that we started in 2004. All of our streets, a lot of our streets really aren't even blacktop. It's basically years and years and years of seal coating. That's about all these streets are. The other thing that we're finding all along, and we've known all along as we have cameras, these systems, is that many of the sewer lines are almost disintegrated to nothing, where they're basically, it's flowing through the clay of in the dirt. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things underground that we're not seeing that needs to be done. And basically put lipstick on it is not going to fix the problem long term. And this is really all about fixing long-term issues that this city hasn't addressed. Some of the streets that we've repaired were 100+ years old and have never seen anything like that. So it's a lot about what's underground. It's not only what's above ground.
Yeah, I would concur with that the biggest issues we see in downtown, I mean, obviously the streets the streets were never built to street standards, and so that's why they're just layer upon layer of seal coat that's been there for years and years on top of the dirt that was originally there. Our biggest issue is utilities. And I mean, this becomes a real significant issue. You know, I'm not sure if there's on this project, but we've run into a number of homes in downtown that still have lead services that go into their houses. We have sewer lines. I know one in particular on a street we did just south of City Hall here. The only thing that was left where the sewer is running through was the actual clay where the pipe used to be. And the sewer was just running right through the soil. So our utilities are in absolute terrible shape down here, and to not address those is going to cause some very significant issues for these homeowners in the future. And you just never know when that's exactly going to happen. So, you know, I get when people see the streets, when we overlay the streets, they look nice. It doesn't even cost a fraction of what, you know, we seal coat an entire neighborhood. Actually, this year we have 2 neighborhoods we're doing for $350,000, and this costs $4.2 million. So it costs us significantly more. Most of that work, if you look in the budget of it, does not relate to the road. Most of it relates to the utilities and everything that serve those homes, and that will become a significant issue for those homeowners over time.
And the other real significant in this particular area is the lack there of storm sewer. And so what that does is it continually leaves water sitting on the street, and especially in the spring and fall with the freeze and thaw, just raises havoc with roads. So that's the other thing. We're going to get storm sewer in there, and the water will get off the roads will be crowned properly. And the other thing that we're going to be doing is along 7th Street, I believe a number of the electric overhead will go underground. Now that takes out storm damage and things like that when you have wind storms and ice storms, when you were able to put some of those underground, plus they're unsightly. So there's, like I say, there's a lot more to it than just making the roads look nice.
Yeah, and I'll point out, as far as the projects go, you know, like the electric service going underground, we do not assess for that. That's something that we just do in conjunction with these projects. And the overall assessments in the grand scheme of the project are about 7 to 8% of the total project costs. So, you know, there's well over 85% of the project that is being covered by the rest of the community. And so our system works when we have people who live on, you know, newer streets that pay into the system and help pay for those old streets, and then those streets become new, and then those people start paying into the system to help pay for the streets as they age. As long as we keep that system, then we just make sure that everybody's contributing so that we keep up with our infrastructure and just don't see it deteriorate and get behind. If we get behind, you know, it ends up causing, ends up getting more expensive, and it ends up being in a position where we can't spread those costs like we normally would.
So the curb and gutter that ties into the storm sewer?
Correct.
That's one and the same?
Yep, that's one and the same.
Okay, yeah, because, I mean, it's not just about, oh, let's just repave the street. I understand all that. It was kind of like, there's gonna be a curb, and then more specifically to that path, to the path, that's, I guess, you know, like a real stumper to the both of us, because, you know, again, everybody who wants to access it kind of already knows that it's there.
And a lot of people use the sidewalks on the new 7th Street loop, if you will. A lot of people access the paths through that sidewalk system.
You want to address this also too? Just from, you know, the other, so I guess that's, you know, was part of our question is, you know, it's like, why does this path to the path, you know, a need? It's like, okay, I can understand everything else you're saying, but again, what he just said, it's, everybody kind of knows it's there. The other part was just from, you know, again, a personal property perspective and also that of our neighbors. The proposal of the addition to this path and the curb is it's not only tearing into our neighbors' yards, causing them to have to give up their garden and their trees, but it's also gonna rip into an area that we have carefully replanted, which is no quick and easy task. And because several years ago, we had to work with the city to enhance the appearance of this area. And now with this project, it's all gonna be torn up. Specifically, a lot of flowers we put in that area will be destroyed unless we move them, and that's a lot of work for us. So, you know, who helps us replant it and replenish and enhance that area again when the work is done? And again, it just comes back to, you know, why do we need a path to the path? It feels entirely unnecessary, and if that path were not part of the project, everything in those areas could be left as is. So, you know, is there another option being considered, you know, that's kind of on a smaller scale, like, you know, no path to the path, in other words, the street being sufficient?
Well, one of the things that Matt Clark and I actually talked about today is, so the plantings, you guys are actually in the easement we have back there, but we've talked about that we could actually go back and replace those as part of the project, and actually replant those. The reason for having that trail section there is because there's a gap in between where the public sidewalk goes and where the trail starts in front of Welter property that's over there. And in general, we just don't like to see gaps where we force people onto the street. And I get it, it's not as busy back there as it is in other sections, but we try to like to have a full trail section instead of creating a gap where somebody has to go on the street. But I do think that we can go in and actually help replant that area, you know, if it's disturbed for putting in that trail.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just trying to identify the growth and thinking, oh, what will we have to move? And who did we talk to? Aaron?
Yeah.
Aaron and Nate from this a couple weeks ago, and they showed the area that would be, how far in it would go, and it was like, wow, that's basically everything except for a tree. And the trees up the hill that are not part of the easement, that are actually part of our property. So that would...
Well, we'd appreciate, if we can have somebody work with us to beautify that area.
So,
That'd be good. I do appreciate that the drainage culvert in there, that's kind of a little rough transition, and it seems like that's gonna be nicer when the project is done, so. We appreciate the willingness to work with us on that.
so the trail is really on our land, it's really not, we're not buying.
No. It's
Property.
it's in an area that we can put it, but it does encroach into area where they've planted in the past and stuff, so, you know, we can accommodate both.
Okay,
All right, great.
okay, thank you.
All right, that's, no more questions then? You're good?
Hold on, I think Tom Barnett may have a question. Or Chris, are you?
Yeah, I
What was
was,
your question?
I was kind of asking Chris if that was the end of her
sorry.
questions.
Oh,
We're done.
You're good on your, that's all your,
I think we're good.
We saw this.
okay, all right,
Didn't know if I was still on microphone.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
All right, and I'm going to unmute Tom Barnett now.
Mr. Tom, how are you?
Hi, Mark. My question is, Matt keeps talking about an assessment of $7,500, but yet the letter that we got in the mail says that our assessment will be $7,613. I was wondering which one it would be.
So is that based on the one extra year with the interest in that? Is that?
No, so every time when the city goes through, and this has been, for any assessment that happens, there's a processing fee that we pay through Carver County, and then there's a 1.5% administrative fee that essentially gets applied to that 7,500. So the 7,613 is really the base assessment is 7,500, but we have a 1.5% administrative fee that we incur, or that the city incurs regardless to certify every year.
But
So what am I paying?
that's only if you don't prepay.
If you don't prepay.
So if I prepay, it's 7613?
If you prepay, it'd be 7,500.
75.
And it seemed to me that Mike was the only one that had any sympathy towards what the pandemic that we're going through right now, and everybody else seemed to think, well, everybody can just pay or just let it go for a year, whatever.
I can speak for myself. I can't speak for the other council members. I absolutely feel for every homeowner right now. I'm self-employed, so, and I'm in a non-essential industry. I completely understand. It's not an easy situation. You look at it from the aspect that this infrastructure project needs to get done to benefit that area and provide jobs for people who are in that industry. But trying to alleviate the pain of the homeowners, to pay, the cost. Of course, if we could defer it for a whole year, for everything to stabilize, that would be ideal, but obviously, as they had spoken, that didn't sound like that was a viable option legally. So I wish it would be a little bit different, but at the same time, it's nice that it's extended a year, and it gives you guys a little bit of flexibility to be able to, pay. And then that was why my personal question was, for now, people pay the minimum, and then as things stabilize, they can pay it off. Is that an option? At least that's where I was coming from with that question. But I absolutely do feel for you, just like I feel for any homeowner right now that is living in uncertain times, of course.
Well, I'm not in that situation because I'm lucky enough that I kept my job and my wife was able to work from home. So it's not really affecting us. I'm just, there's other people in our neighborhood that it could be affecting.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to comment too. I mentioned earlier that I do appreciate the city actually looking into the fact that what could we do, and the fact that we're adding the 16 versus the 15. Although maybe not a perfect solution, it is a helpful solution, as well as people who maybe want to wait a year and then pay it off too. So yeah, I echo the comments of the other council members, because like I said, it's not easy to make decisions like this, but you also don't get to pick the year that you can kick the can down the road, because you gotta do the work as well. So I think this is to me is a little bit of a bonus that we're trying to be flexible within the regulations that the state has. And I actually appreciated the fact that, unprompted, at least for myself, that the city went in and looked into doing that too, so.
So if you guys, are you going to vote today? And if it passes, then we have 30 days starting tomorrow?
Depending on the action that's taken. I mean, there has been some discussion about whether that gets pushed a little bit. It'll depend on what particular action the council would take tonight.
Okay, and this is for Matt. So is it finalized then that 6th Street and Bolt Street will be one ways?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Bolt Street will be a one-way as well?
Yeah, because otherwise you couldn't go back.
Yeah, it would have to be marked.
Yeah, yep. I was not thinking of it that way, but I can see that. And yeah, Tom, I will tell you, these street reconstruction projects are never easy. I mean, there's always, I always feel for people. There's people, even in the good times, that paying this kind of an assessment is not easy. So I'm sorry that it was taken that way. It's not that. I just think that once these things get done and the improvements that they see out of it, most of, like I said, you were at the last meeting, there were people fighting why it wasn't our turn to go. So I think that our best option is to keep moving forward. We're gonna work with people. I think, like I said, we wanted to waive the whole first year, but state statute won't allow us to do that. And, so we are trying to work with people the best that we can. And I think that even, like you said, we got bids on this project and it came under. That's really good, because as of late, the bids have been coming high, because everyone is so busy and so much to do. And so we kind of looked at that too, thinking that there are probably some construction companies out there that may have lost some other jobs that are willing to take on a job that, and we can get it done cheaper. So there's a whole bunch of things that factor in when we look at these things, and obviously, like I said, no one wants to tell you to, hey, you have to come up with $7,500. But I'm not sure how to do it, because it's never a convenient time, it's never a good time, although this is about as wild time as all I can say that I'll admit to, that I've ever seen. But I don't know, we thought is to try to stay, we felt that it's important to keep our street projects going. There's a lot of other projects we're deferring, but the one things that we felt were necessary was keeping going on our street projects and not try to get behind, because we have been playing catch up for 20 years on streets. And so that's where we're here. And if for some reason it doesn't feel right with the rest of the council, then I guess at that point we'll have to deal with it. But like I said, we do sympathize with that, because it's not fun telling people that. But like I said, for the most part, most people have been good. Like you said, we've been getting 50% of the people have been saying, yeah, we're gonna pay it up front and not have to pay the interest. So we try to offer as many options as we can, and even like our city attorney Luke said, that there's options to go to the bank and you can get it probably a lot cheaper than our interest. Like I said, we probably shouldn't be saying that, but I just want to be fair to give people as many options as they can.
Oh yeah, I agree with, we need everything in this street redone and the structure underneath. I mean, I campaigned 25 years ago for city council on that same thing, so I understand completely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Would 2 weeks delay make a world of difference? Is it significant or just important?
It would in the schedule of the project. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, if the council wants to go that way, but
My only thought was going to be if, there's no question, in my opinion, from listening to what Matt said and keeping the projects going, that there's no way we're ever going to get a better bid than we have now. It's absolutely imperative, and this property, the property here is necessary to that project being done. And this is the first time in the history of the United States we've had a pandemic like this. And the only way, and under the statute, everybody's got to be treated the same. Nobody can be treated different than anybody else. But it might be in the number of people out there that some people have lost their job, they didn't get any money through all the projects or the incentives that the federal government is giving out, that the only way anything could be done if somebody has lost their job and it's difficult for them, that would be some special legislation. And right now, I don't know if the legislature is in session now or that, or if we.
not if you want to do a project this year.
Well, really,
Well, I mean, you're never
we've
going to.
never had a pandemic like this either, that they maybe.
But they're not going to deal, I mean, every city is dealing with street reconstruction projects right now.
That's why.
And they're not going to look at one individual one in a
Oh,
city.
no, not us, that special legislation to work all these type things.
I will say that, I have a network of city managers that I keep up with. There's a lot of cities that are continuing to go forward with street projects. And one of the biggest reasons that they've talked about is because the bids have come in so well, and because, just like the mayor said, that these streets, especially in older cities like Chaska, they're just not getting any better, they're getting worse.
Absolutely,
And I think there's been even discussion about how these represent jobs to people, and if every city decided not to do that, how many more jobs wouldn't occur. I know that's what the legislature is focusing on now, is a bonding bill to try to create more construction projects out there, to try to bring more jobs to the table, but I doubt if you'd see them deal individually on city stuff, because most cities are already sort of going through this process already.
Kevin, is there anyone else in the queue?
Well, we had an email come in, so, we did offer to, I did send him the link to join in, but, I haven't seen him join, so I was just going to read the email.
Okay.
So this is from Michael Gilbertson. Listening to the hearing, it appears most, if not all, properties will be assessed $7,500 in fees for work plus interest. My wife and I own the property at 621 Willow Street. I'm wondering why we're being assessed $7,613, not $7,500. Incidentally, the figures given on your maps displayed on TV are unreadable, even on our 50-inch flat TV. Also, I realize these are extraordinary times, but I'm not impressed with a meeting that by its awkwardness and compromised timing is done over TV. It obviously limits input from some, if not most people affected. This meeting could have taken place at a larger place, allowing the 6-foot minimum, or it could have likely waited another month or two, allowing all to participate who want to offer input. Also, I believe some properties are to receive sidewalks, while others, including Willow Street, are not. Is this adjusted in the assessment of the benefits to each property? I.e., if property does not benefit from a sidewalk benefit, is that property compensated for it versus a property that does receive it?
Well, let's take it one at a time. The 7613, I think that was the same question that came up before. It's a matter of if you don't pay off your assessment in full, that's the fees that we get charged from Carver County to actually process the assessment. So it's $7,500 is the base fee plus the, I think it's 1.5% interest for that, for the processing fee.
But if they pay it off, you don't pay it.
But if you pay it off, you do not pay that.
It's the 7,500.
The second one on the how we provide this, we actually did try to have this hearing back March 30th, was it, Matt?
Yeah.
It was right about the same time that the stay-at-home orders came in place. We actually had it scheduled to be at the event center, and we actually delayed this a number of times to try to get it to a point where we could have a live meeting and actually have it at the event center. And it's just, we don't have, if we're gonna do the project this summer and get it finished, we didn't have the luxury of waiting any longer. Because we, like I said, we were ready to go about 6 to 8 weeks ago, and we tried to wait till we get it to a point where we can have an in-person meeting, and, we know for certain that through May 18th we can't. We're not allowed to have an in-person meeting, and we just didn't know where it was going to go from there. And so
we're not sure what's going to happen on May 18th.
We don't know what's going to happen on May 18th, and so we tried to do our best by being able to provide a forum where people can still be involved and be able to have their voice heard. So I am first to say I do not like to have assessment hearings like this. We tried not to, but the timing is just not working. And then the third thing, Matt, that's probably more of a question for you about the sidewalks.
Sure. I think it's important to remember historically what the special benefit analysis, what that does. The short answer to the question is yes. The project or the assessment amounts did look at the individual components of streets, sidewalks, new sewer, new water, curb. So yes, the answer is the benefit amount that was identified for all of the properties is still the $7,500. It does not get into the very individual details. What it really does and what this consultation does is give that market value increase of what it is that the improvements include before the project and after the project. Looks at each of the individual properties and identifies what that amount is.
are we getting any emails back from the gentleman, Kevin? Do you know of?
No, I haven't seen an email back, but I wanted to at least make sure I read the email that was sent.
Because I think that we've been reaching out to people and given many, many opportunities, probably to some degree longer than normal because of the setbacks that we've had, which I'll sit as the mayor, and I'll apologize that it was certainly nothing we wanted to do. And it was things that just happened all of a sudden. I mean, that Friday, I believe, before that May 30th is when the stay-at-home orders came into effect, and we could not have the meeting. Otherwise, we'd have had this well over a month ago, and been able to have people come and have those conversations with us, which myself personally, I'd much rather do.
Well, I'll point out something too. We could have still had that meeting on March 30th, but we would have had to have it by Zoom, and we didn't feel confident enough that we could have a meeting like this that was productive and give people the opportunity to properly speak, because we didn't have the time to really do it. And so we just did not want to, if we knew it had to potentially be by Zoom, we didn't want to do it in a time when we didn't feel comfortable that we could deal with the logistics of running a meeting like this and be able to take public comment.
And absolutely, we're way more comfortable at this point to be able to take that public comment, to let people weigh in. We've opened avenues about emailing, calling in, teleconferencing in. So I feel confident, and we have gotten a number of comments and questions that we've been able to answer prior. So I feel pretty comfortable, and there was a large group here when we first met, and we were able to answer a lot of the questions from a well-sized group of the neighborhood there. So I said, this isn't perfect, but I feel confident that we've given everyone the avenues to reach out. So I don't know. I'm feeling okay with it.
I was going to add, I think it's also important to realize, although not a perfect situation or solution, to do it via Zoom versus the more traditional in the chamber. In some aspects, this actually allows people to be easier to participate because they don't have to come in, sit for the whole meeting, they can jump on. So I do think that's an important aspect to think about too, is that the use of technology actually, again, it's different, and different can be strange and uncomfortable. But it is allowing people who maybe wouldn't participate or be able to participate in the past to participate. So I do got to commend the city and again for getting comfortable with this technology and with Zoom. Again, I think tradition and being face-to-face and in the chambers is important to have that connection with people who bring questions. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that I think utilizing technology also allows other people to participate as well.
Just to piggyback that really quick, just to touch on, it's hard to see things on TV. It's just a good time to remind people that our packets are online too, and that map is in there. If someone did want to view it, you could go view our packet online, and that information's on there on the city website. So I just want to plug that real quick as a reminder.
Thank you.
And I did also pass along a link to that map as well, so.
Yeah, that's a valid point that you bring up, Councilmember Hatfield, that all this information is always on our website, and so please, feel free if you're. Yeah, it's very hard on TV. I've tried to watch that. Any of the things that you're looking at via second camera and pushed out, they're not very clear on the TV, but. There is, if you're able to send a email, there definitely all this information is on our city website.
So just kind of getting back on task to the discussion here. So in the big scheme of things, we have some constraints in terms of the funding, right? There's definitely a need for this in terms of the fact that this is, there's infrastructure that has to be rebuilt. I mean, it's just really core infrastructure down there. There's, because of the way this is structured, pushing it back isn't an option. There's limitations in terms of what we can do from state statutes in terms of, changing our funding or deferring it more than a year, more than what the staff is able to come up with, which is the dollar of principal plus interest and for the rest of the payments for 1 year, which helps specifically the homeowners who are planning on making payments against this assessment. Then on the flip side of it, for the homeowners who are paying in full, the current plan is 30 days they have to pay in full. So the only request I would ask of the council and my colleagues here is, would we be willing to give a little more flexibility, maybe 60 or 90 or 120 days, depending upon what staff felt was reasonable. So that way we found a happy medium between the costs that we are able to, because we know that there's costs we have to take on, so we minimize that risk, knowing that this is a very, I don't think anyone can say in their lifetime reasonably here at this meeting that we've had a pandemic and it had an entire global economy shut down in our lifetime. So to me, it seems like if we're able to do it for homeowners who are making payments, to give a little more grace to homeowners who are trying to pay in full, so that way they don't have to incur the interest costs. Given the fact that we should move forward because it's the right time and we'll save a significant amount of cost by moving forward with the lower construction bids at this time.
Well, before we continue this conversation, we've got a public hearing open, and that's really open for public comment. Your comments are probably more for once we close it and start talking about our next steps. So Kevin, I'm going to ask one more time, is there anyone that we have on hold or anyone else comment at all? Because otherwise I'm going to move forward to close the public hearing.
There's no one, there are no other guests or emails at this time.
So I guess really our only option at this point is to close, otherwise I can't.
Yeah, I would suggest closing the public hearing, but if somebody comments in before the end of it, Kevin, just interrupt and just let us know.
Okay, will do.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 8:41. Now we can kind of go off of Mike's comments, if there's any other council member that wants to, what their thoughts are on what Mike was discussing.
That prepayment 30 days is statutory. The only way you can do it is not, delay the adopting of the assessment roll. You can give them an extra 30 days by doing that 30 days down the pipe, right?
Is our statute or state?
State.
So
okay.
we can.
Is that off the table?
So you're saying that we could adopt the assessment roll, but have it effective certain dates, so that it has the 30 days beyond that?
Right. You just can't say we're adopting now and we'll give them 60 days instead of 30 days.
But we could.
But you could adopt it as of a certain date, and then just whatever date you'd want to be at.
Mayor, if you want, I can just chime in. It's not really a question, but Michael Gilbertson did give a response.
Okay.
I appreciate you explaining things. That helps. I was aware of the planned meeting in person in March. I thought it would work, but things change. I can see the struggle the council has in scheduling in these crazy times. Thanks for the reply.
Thank you. I appreciate, and apparently you're listening, so that's good. Thank you for understanding. We're all in the same thing. We can put things off, but we don't know when that end is either. And or do we try to keep business moving the best that we can have the ability to do so? And I think that's kind of where we're at. And as we sit here talking ourselves about, is there a way to extend that time period about when you pay? And so.
Well, I just want to make sure Luke would feel comfortable. So let's say that the date that they wanted to hit was an extension till August 1st. You could adopt the assessment roll effective July 1st.
I think so, yeah.
So pre-adopted
Because
effective
essentially what
July
you talked
1st.
about earlier tonight, that,
But can we move forward with the project?
Yeah, does that
Yeah,
affect?
yeah.
we can move forward with the project. I mean, here, one of the reasons, not all cities do assessment hearings the way that we do. A lot of cities actually wait until after the project is done, because the reason they do is because, you know, there can be change orders in projects and all those types of things that increase the cost. We, a number of years ago, decided not to go down that road because there's a lot of risk that's involved in that too, because you could go through and get a whole project done and then all of a sudden have something that makes the assessment
Everybody
roll.
appeals it.
Everybody appeals it, or, you know, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in a situation where now you've paid for a project and you don't have the assessment roll in place. We, a number of years ago, said, let's get the assessment roll in place. Now, we as a city take the risk that if the cost of the project goes up, we have to absorb that. But to me, that's not a very big risk to us because we've already said that this is the amount that we can assess, and we really couldn't assess anymore even if the project went up in cost. So I've never really considered that a risk. I consider it much more of a risk if we do it after. But again, a lot of cities do it that way. We just haven't for years because we've wanted to be a lot more conservative on how we approach this. So, yes, we can go forward with the project because we technically don't have to assess it until after the project is done. So I'm not concerned about that. I'd just be more concerned that Luke feels comfortable that we could say, let's adopt it as of a certain date, and then there would be the 30 days beyond that. And it sounds like you feel comfortable with that.
because the 30 days is statutory.
Yep,
We can't say, no, we're gonna make it 60 days.
okay.
And the only other thing I've not heard tonight, if 100% of this project, like some cities do, 100% of the project is assessed, what would my assessment be?
Oh,
$30,000?
yeah, $25,000. I mean, but it's sort of a moot
Right,
point
right.
because, you know, this brings up a real challenge that cities have in reconstructing roads, is that roads cost a lot more than what we can assess.
Right.
And so that's why the general community becomes a lot more responsible for these projects than the homeowners do, because they end up paying, you know, in this case, 90% of the project or 85% of the project. That's an issue statewide.
Right.
So, but again, if you wanted to accomplish that certain date, we'd have to approve the assessment roll as of a certain date and then back into what date you'd want. But I think the question is that a direction that people want to go?
Thoughts out there?
I mean, as long as that's doable to not slow down the construction timeline, I favor what Councilmember Wong is saying, just because a lot of people are laid off right now, or, you know, and sometimes, you know, if you own a business and even though they have the pandemic unemployment, the wheels kind of are moving slow with those sort of things. So this gives time, you know, to hopefully get things back up and get your income more stabilized, or have that assistance, you know, kind of in place to kind of put you in a better spot where maybe you're not as stressed out about your finances, hopefully. But, you know, there's no magic time window that's gonna make it best for everyone, which is really hard, because, you know, you want that for everybody. But I think delaying it out, I think would be helpful for a lot of people that are maybe in uncertain times economically.
I guess I would say that my chosen career professional, I believe in consistency. So I can understand and believe the importance of consistency and the fear of setting a precedent. However, I will say that I don't have a fear of setting a precedent, because we are in such a unique environment with the pandemic, and that, you know, I don't think it's a pandemic where, you know, the next, I'll say, recession comes around where we're really concerned about that, because I think this is a very unique piece. So, you know, I'm listening because like I said, I always try to balance consistency and trying to make sure we're being consistent with our processes and our practices and how we treat people. And, you know, where does that connect to precedent? And like I said, I think it's easily defendable down the road and say, well, why did you do something different that time versus the other time? It's like, well, show me a time when you had a global pandemic, unemployment numbers as high as they are, and an economy struggling as high as they are. So, you know, to me, I think if it's not creating too much interest risk for the city, it's still producing the process to go forward. I'm open to that. Now, I think we got to figure out how many days and what that looks like. But I think I'm open to that because again, I think we can be consistently flexible, which is not an oxymoron.
Yeah, I think I just echo everybody else. If the impact and the risk is low, then extending it and doing what we can is you know, doing as much as we can to help during these times is important. So I think as long as the risk is low and the impact is low, I agree with Councilmember Grad that you know, we keep calling it unprecedented. So I too am like, let's keep this consistent, but we use that word and it is. So I think it's something that definitely I would agree with at this time.
And so just to make this clear, this is only extending the ability to pay it off interest-free.
Yep.
Prepaying. So nothing else changes about the interest, whatever the fees are, it's strictly, like I said, I know the council's shaking their head, but I just want to be clear to anybody watching that if there's some just not quite clear that this is solely the ability to pay in full without any interest or what do you call them, service charges.
Yeah.
And if Matt Clark and Matt Podorowski, if you're telling me that August 1st is not going to cause us any undue harm as far as financials, I would support that as well, but I want to make sure that we're completely.
Yeah, what I would actually suggest is if we did this, maybe make the assessment roll effective August 1st, and then that would give till 30 days beyond that, which is, it's either August 31st or September 1st.
But is that pushing it too far? See, I was wondering if we're going too far. I mean, I don't know.
I mean,
because I always hate to go, Mayor, I agree with you. I mean, I hate to push everything right up to the end, so maybe back it up a month.
okay.
So make it July. That way, if there's anything, we can also make in any change. Then we have a better cost control.
So
have a better idea.
July 1st, then we'll make the assessment roll, put it in place. Then August, it'd be due then 30 days after, which is July 30th or August 1st or whatever that date is. Matt, do you have any issues there?
No, so that the next time that you'll be seeing things back, because we did have a bid opening and things last week, we have yet to award a project. I think one thing that we do have is I think a 60-day time period for which we can delay.
Well, this doesn't change the process for the assessment. So
No,
I think we have to make it clear that the hearing is tonight. And
Hearing has to be this evening.
I mean, the
question is
hearing has been open, the hearing has been closed. People had until tonight to be able to put their appeal in, which we received 3 of them, which it preserves their right to be able to appeal. And this does not extend the right to appeal the assessment. Is that correct,
I
Luke?
would think so.
Yeah. This is
this was the
merely when the assessment becomes effective.
Is that everybody good?
Matt, you look concerned about something.
Yeah, because I just want to make
Oh,
sure.
we got Noel on the line.
Yeah, Noel's on the line too. I think one of the things we need to do, so we did have in the resolution, the date of which the interest shall be charged if the assessment is paid within, and we assigned a 30-day period from the adoption of this assessment. So I'm just trying to navigate.
Well, you'd have to actually, let's let Noel chime in here.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and Matt, there is an old precedent that the city had as it relates to the flood control project. We did follow a practice back then that said we would not start the assessment date until after that first contract was let. So I think you might be able in a similar situation where you could adopt the assessment rule here, have that later date like Luke has defined, and then if we're issuing the construction contract later, we're consistent with some of our past practices by having a longer period. There would still then be that 30 days. The only thing I would caution at this point is I would want to check with our bond counsel, because when they issue the debt, they will check that 30-day window, so we have to make sure we comply with the 30-day window.
So that, but the 30-day would be from the date that we actually made the assessment hearing binding.
Yes, that's per Luke's advice. I would want to get that confirmed with bond counsel, because they are going to check to make sure that that 30-day interest-free period was followed.
So, yes.
What do we do tonight?
Well, what I would suggest is that we actually, if we're going to move in this direction, actually adopt it like Luke is saying. And if we had to come back and do any kind of amendment at that point, we could come back with an amendment to it
But
too.
by approving this tonight, we'll shut the door on us going till July 1st?
No, I'm saying that we should approve it with the July 1st tonight.
Oh, just say it. Okay.
Yeah. Noel, from your perspective, does that seem like a fair approach?
Yes, I agree, because that's consistent with our past practices, it's consistent with what Luke's advising, and it gives us the time to let bond counsel review it, and we bring any changes back as needed. But it would at least complete the process you're trying to complete tonight of taking the public input and stopping the clock for the appeal process.
Yep.
Okay, I was thinking you wanted to talk to bond counsel first, but okay.
No,
I got it.
if there is any
I got it.
change, I don't think there will be, because we'll meet that 30 days, but if there is, we could bring it back afterwards. I think the big thing we're trying to accomplish tonight is to complete the assessment hearing.
Yeah.
And get that assessment rule adopted so that people have some certainty about what's gonna happen, one way or another.
Yep, and then that way we can award, now, would we be awarding the contract at the next meeting then?
I think you have it for May 18th as the contract.
So that's already on there, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
So how would we need to word this motion?
So you'd basically need to make it specific that we make that resolution identify July 1st as the date that the assessments would, because Matt, the resolution says then that there's a 30-day period beyond that, so we just need to define July 1st as that date.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if that's a council meeting or not, it doesn't have to
No.
be on one of our scheduled meetings, we
No.
can set a date.
Yep.
So first, I'm gonna go back to council and say, are there any more questions before we move forward on a motion?
So just to clarify, this would be that this would mean that as of July 1st, it would automatically be in effect.
Yeah, so the assessment roll would automatically be in effect, the assessment hearing would be done tonight, and the July 1st would start that 30 days without interest.
Yep, so all the boxes are checked.
Yep.
Yep.
Everybody out there shaking their head in the same direction?
Nodding.
Matt Clark?
Yep.
Noel, you're good?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, how about Kevin Wright, you good?
Great.
All right, just want to make sure. The man behind the other curtain. All right, council, we're good? If we're all good, then I would entertain a motion that we accept tonight's public assessment hearing with July 1st as...
Yeah, you'd need to approve that resolution.
Oh, okay. So we'd be adopting resolution 2020-33 which is the assessment for the public hearing of downtown street utility with a July 1st, what's the word? I'm not
The
sure.
July 1st, the assessment roll becomes effective on July 1st.
That the assessment roll becomes effective July 1st, which starts the 30-day clock to have
Interest-free, penalty-free,
penalty-free
prepayment.
Prepayment.
Yep.
Does that cover it all, Luke?
Sounds good.
All right. Don't make me repeat that motion, so just say, that I make a motion to approve that motion.
Councilmember Wong, so moved.
All right, motion by Councilmember Wong.
Second by Hubbard.
Second by Councilmember Hubbard. Again, it's adopt resolution 2020-33, public assessment hearing, and the July 1st. What's that already? I already forgot it.
Effective date.
Huh? Assessment roll.
Effective that.
Effective July 1st.
July 1st.
Yep. Okay. All right, discussion. I think we've kind of beaten that one pretty good. All right. Roll call. So it'd be Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Grah,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong,
Aye.
Mayor Winchell, aye. Motion carries. All right, we got through that. I think it's a good compromise. I think it's well discussed. Thank you for all, and thank you all for watching tonight. I'm sure there's a good share of you watching. Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. And I know it wasn't easy on you, and it's not easy on you, and this hasn't been easy on us trying to make all this work as well. So thank you for your patience, and I'm sure that when we're all done, that we'll have a good project and things will be good. So, all right. We will move on to item number 9, bills.
I have some questions.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead.
So fortunately, I don't have a lot. So I did notice that on the bills that we have quite a few refunds, not nearly as many as we did last month, as we discussed last month. So, which is good. It's definitely saw some event center cancellations on there. The first question is on page 1. There is a bill for, what is it? Sorry, wrong glasses here. For ABM equipment supply, and that's for a setup service body.
Yeah, so that's, so basically that's for our squad cars. So we buy our squad cars as basically shells, and then they have to be built up with all the equipment inside of them.
That is squads,
What?
that is squads, not dump trucks?
I think so, because the next item is a light bar.
Okay.
Yeah.
They go on dump trucks too.
Yeah, I think this is police.
And so the next question I have is on page 23. So then there's what's the next one, which is that the set up the light bars. Are they in police or fire? And unrelated note, since we're kind of talking about this, what's the vehicle replacement cycle for police and fire? Since, like most of us in council are new enough, we haven't seen the whole replacement cycle on those yet.
Yeah, the police squad cars, that's sort of apropos that Noel's still on. He could probably answer this. The police cars are, I believe, 3-year replacement schedule. When you get into more of the fire vehicles, yeah, it depends on the vehicle. We have, when you get into some of the big pumpers and stuff, they're like 20-year replacement.
You try to run them 10 years at a front line and 10 years as a backup.
Yeah.
And aerial devices, they can range different times. They can.
Our aerial devices right now is bought in 2002, so we're scheduled in 2022 to replace that.
So that's 20 years.
That's 20 year. And then when you get into like the Tahoes and stuff, they're usually about 10 years.
So the Tahoes, okay.
Yeah, and that's in the fire department.
Yeah, because their use is a lot different than a police vehicle,
Yep.
the cruiser.
Yeah, by far the vehicle that gets used the most is the police squad.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so on page 25, there's one for Premium Waters Incorporated. This is a quick question. I'm assuming that's TC Waters for drinking water for the town course, or is that something?
Yeah, that's one place that we do have bottled water out there for customers.
Okay. Okay, and then page 26. So there's a 16,196 for LED lights for the men's facility. That seems like an awful lot.
Yeah, so it's light replacement within our community center with some of the work that we're doing now. It's in our whole entire pool area, and then it gets down into our locker room areas. And the thing to point out about that is that we actually are using our electric rebate program for that. So although the expense is incurred, it actually gets covered through our dollars we have to spend through our CIP program.
Oh, that's awesome. So this is paid for with some of the rebate that we get from our municipal utility then?
Well, it's some of the money that we earn that we're required to spend by the state on conservation programs. So it's our money, but we're required to spend it.
And then, of course, because the LED lights, then it goes right back into that.
Yeah, and if you've looked at commercial LED lights, they are not cheap.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's gonna have a very noticeable difference to the pool area when it's done, because they're significantly brighter.
Are these like the white ones or the warm lights?
I don't know, I haven't seen them on yet, but it's gonna be a lot brighter feel in there.
Okay, very cool. And then the last question is on page 1 of the electronic payments. That's for the Carver. It looks like Carver County Transit, and there's like a general U.S. General sales tax.
Yeah.
So what's the Carver Transit one for, and what does the sales tax include from like a business perspective? Like, is it just the town course, community center, curling, Crook and Pine, or are they broken out?
Yeah, no, it's so we pay one bill to the county, and it's broken into, or we have two sales tax that we pay to the state, and one is broke out for the county. That's their transportation sales tax. So every business in the community, every business in Carver County pays I forget the percentage, but it's
Quarter of a percent.
Quarter of a percent. So it's that's basically what funds Carver County's road program.
Okay, got it. And so this is the repayment of that back to the state then?
No, it's basically the state collects the revenue, and then they remit it to Carver County.
Oh, so it's basically the whole like money process where it goes back to the state and then back down.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. That's all I got. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Motion to pay the bills.
Councilmember Wong, so moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second by Councilmember Grau.
second by Councilmember Grau to pay the bills. Nate, can I do the roll, or do you have to do this? Probably doesn't matter, huh?
You want it right or wrong?
I'll just do it as long as I've been doing it, if you're good with that.
Sounds good.
All right, I think, I don't know if I asked discussion on any of the bills. All right, roll call, Councilmember Grau,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong,
Aye.
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, yes. All right, moves us to other business. Who's on the top? Councilmember Hubbard, you're up first.
Winner. I was just gonna say, Nate, don't fall asleep. Since all your job's away.
Waiting for update. How could I fall asleep?
Couple of things, just to cheerlead the census again this meeting. I looked, we are actually in third place now. We have dropped down one level here, but 74.6% Carver County filling out the census. So nationwide, that's pretty cool to be third, but take 5 minutes, go on there, get it done. census2020.gov. And then a couple other things. I saw that there were a couple things with the Chaska Parks and Rec that I thought were kind of fun to note in case, you know, somebody else wasn't. But they're doing a Mother's Day take and make kit. You can pick it up at the Chaska Community Center. You have to pre-register for it, so you have to go on and I'm assuming buy the kit. They're $12 for one child, and it includes a flower pot and soil, plants, chocolates, and craft in a card. And they have a pickup date, you know, but you have to register and there's limited supply. So I just thought that was kind of a nice incentive, something neat that the community center is doing for Mother's Day. All you gentlemen out there, you can't rely on your school children's craft project this year. So I see Councilmember Gross smiling down there. And then the other thing that I thought was neat by them was, if I can find it, I saved it. They're doing a Chaska Bike Month bingo. So Chaska Parks and Rec, where you can fill out the little bingo card. I don't know, it's really hard to see on my phone. But thought those were neat. And just wanted to thank the fire department and police department. I did one of those birthday parades and spooked all my neighbors. They thought something really bad had happened in the neighborhood because I didn't pre-warn them. But it was really, really fun and exciting. So thank you for that. That's it.
Councilmember Grah.
I had a couple of questions I was just actually looking for, and then an informing piece. So the first question in regards to the water shutoff that was scheduled up here in the southwest area that was delayed. It was supposed to be tomorrow, actually. I assume that it was kind of put out there for COVID-related reasons. I'm assuming it's the fact that you're shutting off water and a lot of people are at home and can't wash hands. Is any sense that that's going to significantly delay any projects or timelines or anything like that, or any ideas of when that date will come again?
Matt?
No, so we've been able to work around that in the overall project schedule. It was really kind of, the short answer is no. Residents in the area can expect at some point with the next phase of construction, there will come a time, hopefully we're moved out of this stay-at-home, shelter-in-place. So I would expect that to come with the next section of road that's going to get tore up.
Okay, and then just to connect the dots from previous work session, when we talked about Creek Road and the improvements, once that's done, that prevents like future water shutoffs like this, right? That's the whole issue, is that there's only a one-way in, and anytime something with the road happens, the water gets shut off. Is that my understanding?
Yes, it will strengthen the system so that we have two connections. Ultimately, I think your question, John, is, you know, the Cascade neighborhood is really the top of the line for us. It's really, I mean, the Clubs West neighborhood, the Harvest West neighborhood, as we implement the Creek Road project, that those neighborhoods will have a two-way feed. Where we still remain a little susceptible is in the Heights or the Cascade area until we make another connection, which would be on the west side of Highway 212, which we talked about, the industrial park piece, and bringing that feed up.
So there's tied together. You won't get the west feed until there's sewer out there, because to build buildings, and then the water feed will happen at the same time those buildings start going up there.
Okay. Well, I will say that it's convenient that a lot of people aren't leaving the neighborhoods and that construction's happening. You know, it's a little bit of an adventure to get out of my neighborhood specifically. You know, I know that they're doing their best job to make the road drivable. I do know there was a little bit of a heightened concern in the neighborhood because we were supposed to have a fire truck come through the neighborhood, and they actually couldn't get in the neighborhood because I'm going to guess that if there was a fire, that they would have risked getting in the neighborhood with the road, but they actually elected not to come in with the birthday patrol that night. Now they've been in here other days. So I just think it is a good reminder, because I think it did create some conversation of like, well, let's hope there's not an event in our neighborhood tonight because fire truck couldn't get in. So I just share that because, like I said, I think it wasn't probably worth the risk. They actually notified the family and had the family go stand on a different road and was able to do it for the birthday. But it did draw some conversation when all of a sudden the fire truck was told they couldn't get into our neighborhood. So just to share. And then lastly, on the 21st of April, we had the Community Education Advisory Council that I sit on with the community ed. They had some interesting information, as obviously as everyone probably can get. Community ed is dramatically impacted by not being able to do programming with the COVID situation. I did, something that I wanted to share because I thought, some numbers were interesting on COVID care, which is the care that was set up for essential workers and that type of piece. A couple things that I found interesting is one is that I never thought of this until it was brought up in the meeting, but when the Governor Walz kind of mandated that schools need to provide this care, in some aspects it was thought that, you got teachers, you got payroll, you got people that you can employ to do that, and they keep getting paid, and it's not a cost. The issue that it created for Eastern Carver County is that the child care part of that comes through a different fund. It doesn't come through the general fund, it comes from the community fund. And so it's not the teachers' pay that's paying for that fund. So I know that they've had to work closely with the superintendent to figure out what that means, and having to employ more of the, I'll say, maybe paras to help with COVID care, and actually have had to furlough quite a few employees, as you can probably imagine, with the community recreation and ed. Numbers-wise, COVID care, they've seen on average 35 to 40 kids, mostly elementary. They also offered a preschool COVID care, which wasn't actually mandated by the governor, but the city or the school district decided to do that, and that's average about 10 kids a day. And like I said, so it's being successful. My understanding is that people have to commit about a week ahead of time so they can kind of figure out the numbers, and the numbers have fluctuated some, but that's kind of the numbers that they were seeing. So I thought I would share that because, like I said, it didn't even dawn on me that our club care, community ed, child care is not the general fund, right? That came up during the referendum and whatnot. And so, it wasn't just like, well, you're going to pay the teachers to provide this care. It became a little bit more complicated than that. So I thought I'd share that with the council.
All right, good.
And that's what I have.
Thank you. All right, Councilman Wong.
Yeah, so I got a couple things. So first, there was a requested that something be added to the packet for this evening. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the Met Council's regional transit planning workshop that was held last week, not this week, but last week. And the transit planning seminar is used by the Met Council to set regional transit priorities for budgeting. And that's used by Met Council to help guide the state in terms of what funding is needed and where it should go. So this was something where they actually pulled together, people from throughout the region, throughout Met Council and other constituencies to try to build their understanding of where the needs were. And so I included the deck from that because I thought you would find it interesting, and also want to make sure the public had access to it too. That one of the things that we found very interesting was that in the course of the conversation, most of the deck and most of the priorities that were outlined in the structure of the meeting were focused around items such as population and employment density, low-income density, low-income population, areas of concentrated poverty, non-white population density, low vehicle access population density, senior population density, and low-wage employment density. What's interesting about every single one of those areas, when you think about it from an urban transportation model, is that if you live in Minneapolis proper, or you live in towards the core of the Twin Cities, Minneapolis or St. Paul, you have very high densities of all of those different things because of, just because there's a lot more population. But if you look at the map that's included within the packet that was included for tonight, if you look at where we are, we almost score almost nothing for the vast majority of those categories. And what's concerning to me was that they didn't include some of the criteria that were used for standing up. The reason why that Chanhassen, Chaska, and Eden Prairie formed Southwest Transit, which was to provide service benefits for congestion mitigation, as well as pollution mitigation, and providing alternative transport services for commuters in our part of the metropolitan area. And so none of those priorities were included within this discussion. So when the team got together and kind of looked at this, and even me, sitting on Southwest Transit's board, kind of looked at this, it was like, wow, there's no way we could score well on this from a funding perspective if these are the only criteria that were looked at. And that's really concerning, but I wanted to make sure I shared that because, that's, because it shows from a funding perspective right now, based on some of the analysis that's being done, it doesn't look like we're scoring well in any of these areas because they're not looking at any of the areas where our primary bus services to, or the reasons why it exists. But I want to make sure you have visibility to it because as a community, we're heavily invested in this as an opt-out, as not part of the Metro Transit bus system. So I want to make sure we have visibility to this because if there's issues from a constituency perspective or from a funding perspective where we come back and say, hey, you know what, we may have to cut services because we're getting less money from the state and through Met Council. I think this is going to be one of the primary drivers why. Is because of the way some of these things are structured from the Met Council staff. So I wanted to provide some transparency on that because right now, at least these are discussions that take place that help to be formative around transit funding for now and future years. So it may not be like tomorrow or even this year, but in the next couple of years, they may be very formative of some of the transit funding policies. The other item was that we had the Chaska Business Roundtable. That was, again, also last week as well. That was last Thursday. It was the first time, and Nate did a great job of hosting the first one. I think we might have future television hosting duties at some point, possibly. So just saying. Noah's shaking his head there. But I think they did a great job. The turnout was pretty good considering it was the first one. It was put together in a hurry. Hopefully that. I think the second one, it sounds like the people who attended seemed to really get a lot out of it and seemed to really appreciate the information that was there. Nate, do you want to say something about it since we're talking about it? I think you're mute, Nate.
Yeah, I am. I think it was productive. I think it was a good conversation. I think it's worth continuing the effort. Out of it, the main message I heard is that the businesses are really trying to seek ways to meet the governor's guidelines and figure out how they can open up. And so if there's ways that we as a city, and we're pursuing these things, can try and help the businesses, connect to resources like PPE, shields for the registers, some of those sorts of things, and work through some of that, that's going to be helpful for them. So that's sort of at least right now, the immediate thing that a lot of them are thinking about. And so, we're pursuing some of that. I think we're going to have some ideas, and we're going to be in a place to hopefully schedule the next one within the next couple days and start working towards that. So another goal that I'll have personally for that will be to make sure that we schedule it out in time so that we can just get a public announcement out that'll allow more of the council members to join if they want to. I know not everyone who had a desire was able to, so we'll try to plan for that to occur as well.
And so this, I think it was really helpful, and to certainly be able to reach out to even those individual business owners, the people who maybe work out of their own home or have a small shop in the community. So this is for everyone, not just the big companies, but this is for those small business owners. And I want to just also put out a thank you to Chaska Downtown Business Alliance, Southwest Metro Chamber, Carver County CDA for being part of that, because I think it's a huge thing to be able to support our small businesses. Upcoming events, the Chaska Bash is one of those things this is one of those heart-wrenching things because the Chaska Bash is supposed to be a week from Friday. and obviously it's canceled because of what's going on. So, my thoughts kind of go out to, the perspective of where are we going to get funding for, programs and things for next year if we're not having these events. So, I know that for the, boosters and for a lot of our, the fundraisers within our community and for parents and students, this is a big deal, right? It's a huge program for our schools and to serve our students and our kids. So, it's something the repercussions of getting back to normal aren't going to be, many of them will be felt next year and even going beyond that. And this is just a reminder that the event that's not happening a week from Friday is going to have a ripple effect throughout next year. Also, like coming up this weekend, Mother's Day weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all those moms out there. And of course, I noticed that a number of businesses and a number of restaurants are starting to offer like Mother's Day packages to do a takeout kind of Mother's Day meal. So it's good to see that businesses are getting creative out there, and it's always good to try to celebrate Mother's Day too. And a couple of last items, Southwest Transit, I mentioned earlier as a topic, but Southwest Transit is currently in the process of implementing additional safety protocols based on some of the things that it's been seeing. One of the things of note is that in some other more high density transit areas, such as like New York City, I think had something like over like 30 or 40 deaths amongst transit workers. So this isn't just riders, but people who actually work in transit. They've had like upwards of 40, probably more than that, who've actually died to this COVID thing. So because of that, we're taking precautions to make sure our drivers are safe because they have to interact with people in very close proximity on a day-to-day basis. So they've done things like trying to provide like either PPEs or hand sanitizer and stuff, which are also very hard to get. They've also done things like jury rigging stuff like effectively a shower curtain they can pull across when people are boarding and then pull back open when they're not boarding. It sounds kind of a little goofy, but it's still a shield between them and other people there so they can still interact and stuff. So I know that the staff there is working really hard to try to do that, but they're working really hard to try to make sure they minimize the spread amongst both staff and with customers too. And of course, service is still down over 94, 95%. So it's a lot going on. Last thing here is the last meeting we discussed the overlay projects, and we also discussed the overlay projects would be continuing, and then the playgrounds would not be continuing, right? Because of what's going on today.
That's I'm going to be bringing back to you guys in June a list of things in 2020, and we're looking at 2021 of us not doing. One of the things we're looking at is our CIP program, and sort of like we talked about tonight is trying to keep our street program stuff in there, but putting a hold on all the rest of the stuff. So it's something I'd like to bring back to you guys in June to be able to have some input into it, but that's at least what we're looking for ideas now.
Okay, and the reason why I brought it up is because just last week I got a letter in the mail here that was from City of Chaska saying, oh, by the way, we're going to get a new playground, and I thought, well, that's kind of strange. I thought we just talked about that.
The letter literally went out the day before we put that out there as an idea to say maybe we shouldn't do that. So okay. That's the epitome of bad timing. So we're getting out notice to let people know once that's official. So
okay, sounds good. That is all I got. So happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilmember Hatfield.
I just have a couple of things. The Chaska Cares initiative, I just think it's the coolest thing in the world, especially right now. And just some notes from that. Chief Weeby noted that there had been, and there might have been a couple of these that haven't happened yet, but 150 plus birthday patrols that have happened, which is so cool. And then also kind of partly part of that, but with Governor Walz asking for everyone to bring masks to the fire department, it was last Saturday. Over 137,000 masks arrived at fire departments, and 1,900 of those were from Chaska, which I think is just awesome and just shows the caring nature of our town. So I just thought those were really cool things to note from the Chaska Care Initiative, and I just continue to be excited about what's coming from that.
Councilmember Hatfield, if I could just pause for a
Yeah.
second there. And as of today at our EOC meeting, all but 50 of those masks have been spoken for. So we've gotten them out in a rather quick fashion, and we're kind of setting up the ability to have a collection box just at the fire station if people want to continue to make them. So I thought collecting them is important, but getting them out is just as important. So, and I'm
Yeah.
happy that, and again, that's through the fire department and Chaska, hashtag Chaska Cares, so. Okay, sorry.
And then my last thing was just to also plug the census. I know Councilmember Hubbard did as well. I think it's really cool that we're so high up in the stats. And just remind everyone that it's our representation and our funding in part depends on that. So definitely take the literally 1 to 2 minutes it takes to do that, especially with all the time at home. So just a little plug for that as well. And that's all I had.
All right, awesome, thank you. Luke, anything?
Only one thing, when I became city attorney, back in colonial times, the law was that council had to vote individually whether to pay bills or not. If I don't charge you, should I see if that's still the law? Could very well have changed since then.
Didn't I do that?
No, you didn't, but
Oh.
I just wonder maybe you don't have to do it anymore.
Oh.
They changed laws.
Oh, like I said, as long as I've been
Seems
here.
like a good idea to me.
Yes, as long as I've been here, we've always done roll call on bills.
No, I looked at it.
That's what they told me.
The first year I was here, we found that out, but that was a long time ago.
Well,
They
you
have
check
changed
into it.
Okay.
I'm all right with that.
I have nothing else.
All right. Nate, anything?
Yes, I have a quick update here. Matt highlighted this in the bi-weekly, so I know you all read that multiple times, but I just want to make sure that I cover this one. So Denise now Beebe and I are working on a project to bring in some more automated approaches to making improvements and updates to our ordinance. And as we're going through that, we're finding some recommendations from the folks that are working on that of ways that we can further improve the way that it's organized. So right now we've got something like 25 different chapters in the ordinance, and they're not necessarily organized in the most efficient way. What's being recommended is an approach that would be able to remove about half the chapters, not the language or the ordinances themselves, but narrow it down to 12 chapters of ordinance, just by reorganizing it, which makes it more effective and easy to get through as a resident as you're trying to navigate ordinances and find things that impact you. The broader impact is that it sets up more space for us to add chapters in the future as our community continues to evolve and things need to get added. But it also, through this process, gets us to the second phase, which is really the desired outcome, which would be an opportunity to work with our CSO division and other divisions and departments throughout the city to revise our ordinances kind of throughout with a more fine-tooth comb, find things that need to be updated, find things that maybe can be removed, and go through that process. And that really gets enabled by that software that we are implementing there. So kind of two phases. One is to implement the software, move forward with reorganizing the code for efficiency and ease of navigation. And then the second phase would be to actually dig into the ordinances and make some changes there. As we complete that first phase, we would need to bring it to you to accept that reorganization. It wouldn't change the content, but it would change the way that it's organized. So I don't want to have that come to you and have that, not have heard about what it is that we're doing and have it come off as a surprise. So that's an update on the process that we're going forward with. If you have any questions or concerns about that, definitely happy to help with that.
All right, anything else, sir?
That would be it.
All right, thank you. Matt?
I just wanted to give a quick thanks to our senior housing communities within Chaska, like Auburn Manor, Chaska Heights. I was trying to think of the other, it's Carver County CDA, the Landing. We had as part of our EOC meeting today, we had a really good conversation with the people who lead those organizations, along with Carver County Public Health. We got talking a lot last week about how there's been such a terrible impact on COVID-19 in these senior facilities, and how devastating it'd be in a community like Chaska if all of a sudden you woke up and we were like New Hope and we had 47 people who passed away in one facility. And what are things that we could potentially do as a community to help address that if that ever became an issue? I think the thing that was really reassuring when we went through that discussion is how much they are doing. And and I think the conversation was really good for us to understand what was going on. I thought they were real frank with us about what they're able to do and what they can't do. And I think we, in the process, ended up making a few connections with between facilities and public health that hopefully continue those relationships, and so that people don't get overwhelmed by something and then all of a sudden end up with a major issue. So just a big thanks to them, and they're one of them. They're truly on the front line, and appreciate them taking the time to talk with us today.
And they were really real honest to us about where they're at, and I think that was the important things that came out of that, and this was in my stuff to talk about as well, and I'm going to touch on the next one as well. Is now we want to start meeting with people that are food manufacturing within our city, and just kind of make sure that they're, and what we did as a city, we said, what can we do for you? How can we help make these things better? And we got a couple things that we're going to work on, but we're going to meet with one. I wanted to reach out to Michael Food to say thank you for what they did, but then that kind of gives us an opportunity to say, hey, how's it going? For you as a manufacturer. I'm sure. Or we just want to make sure that they're all good and understand, and like I said, it was real eye-opening when we met with the healthcare. So we're going to meet with, we got a meeting with Michael's, I think Wednesday, right, Nate? And then he's shaking yes, and then we're going to try to get them all together and just see, because sometimes you bounce ideas off each other. You might not listen to each other locally that often, and so I think it gives us a good way to kind of get those folks together. And it's a good way for us to understand, as the people that have to take care of if something happens, to be able to help and work with them and see if there's things that we can do for them. So it has been great on that. So
well, and honestly, some of the things that we end up doing as a city, even with our own services, these ideas are generated through discussions we have with other cities. So it makes sense that getting these groups together to talk about what are different things that they have done within their facilities might spark some ideas within other facilities. Say, maybe we should be considering that too.
we don't want to be that city that has a CNN truck roll in. That's a no-no. So that's our goal. So we want to work with as many different groups as we can. Matt, anything else?
No.
All right, a few, I want to get cracking here. We also do have a short EDA meeting, and I'm thinking a couple minutes between the two. I don't know. We don't have to log off, right, Kevin, right?
Nope, you'll stay on, so just remember,
Okay.
it's not muted.
Just want to remind, yeah, we're not muted. So, but just a few things. I don't know, I think this council now is part of this, but I'm not sure. The MnDOT property at Audubon and Pioneer for the mountain bike club, they have been cutting trails in there, and it looks like most of the trails have been cut in there. So I thought that is kind of one of those positive things that they're doing, why we're in this situation and up there getting that. And I don't know when it's going to open, but I saw that was open, and I thought that was a great thing.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Just one comment on that. I will take a shout out because there are some good things that come in social media too. And I will say that actually on some of the stuff that I kind of watch, kind of got flagged as what's going on, why are they doing this, who's paying for that. And I do appreciate the people who commented with the correct information about what was going on, and that it was volunteer work, because it is, you know, anytime right now, any penny is going to get scrutinized, right? So I think there was good concerns like, well, what's going on there? So I just want to kind of thank those individuals, and they obviously know who they are, but they kind of quickly commented like, here's what's really going on, and actually had some people saying, well, how can I volunteer to help? So, which was kind of cool.
Yep, that's awesome, I agree. I was informed that our Vets Park was on Channel 9. Did you get a chance to see it? I looked for it last night, couldn't find it, so if anybody has a chance, look up on Channel 9. I'm not sure what it was highlighted, but apparently it was...
The mayor?
Yes.
It was a graduation, a virtual graduation from, I don't know, it was like a military program. So someone who graduated, since they couldn't attend in person, they are from Shoreview, and they picked our Veterans Park because of some of the quotes and the setting there. So I do recommend taking a look at that, because it did shine a very good light on that project.
You know, I'm not very good at that, and you're pretty good at that. Is there any way we can put that link on our on Chaska Communications?
Yep, easy enough.
Awesome.
Can you please blink?
No, knowing Kevin, it'll be done before I'm done talking. So thank you, Kevin. Well, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize it was that, and that even makes it a little more special. So that's awesome. I do want to touch a little bit on Chaska Cares. I agree with Councilmember Hatfield. I think it's awesome, and I just see so many things just keep blending out of this, and it just keeps moving. So if anybody whatsoever sees anything or sees something cool within the community, add the hashtag Chaska, hashtag Chaska Cares, and then it just makes those stories that we can tell someday all that much better, because we can find them and track them better. So, and I just think more and more things are coming out of it on a daily basis. So, and this might be one right here. In all likelihood, we're going to have our own Chaska Community Fund as early as this week. There's a meeting set up for Wednesday. We're pretty confident it's all going to happen. I don't have all the details, but basically it'll be, there's been a lot of conversation about people, some that have gotten stimulus money, that have been looking for places to donate, and we really haven't had really didn't have that tool to be able to do that. And we worked through the Carver County Community Fund, and they were able to help us set this up. And the great thing about it is that we'll get our name on it, but they really do all of the who it goes to, and they'll do all that, go through all the applications and things like that. So I think that's another great thing that has come. Again, I'm gonna tag that with Chaska Cares. So that's gonna be coming out of there. So hopefully we'll see something by the end of the week on that. So another cool thing. I too want to mention the birthday parade patrol is still something that is really something that's brought community together, probably more than anything. Councilmember Hatfield talked about there's 150. I'm sure that they're well over that. And last time I had heard, they told me they still had like 50 some on the books, and I don't see it ending until we decide probably to end it. But I just think it's great. So thanks to our police and fire. They've done an amazing job, and all seem to love going out on them. And I've had the opportunity to go on them, and they are a lot of fun, because you know you're heading to a particular house, but it's amazing how it brings the people out, and just to see everybody smiling and waving and having a good time. So that's really pretty awesome. So thanks to those different groups. Today is International Firefighters Day, so I want to take this moment and say thank you to all of our firefighters for all their dedication and commitment to their jobs. And I'm surprised I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it all day. May the 4th be with you. So that's International Fire Day. So just remember that for the future. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. I do want to wish that as well. Happy fishing to everyone going out fishing Saturday. Be safe. Unfortunately, there was a fishing boat that threw a couple of fisher people out today, and unfortunately one passed. Did not have life jackets on. Wear your life jackets. Lakes are a little choppier than we think they are. So, but have fun fishing. And then, next council meeting, May 18th. Now, are we still here? We're not going to event center?
Yeah, so because it's still uncertain what's going to happen, because this shelter in place goes until May 18th, we got to just assume that our next meeting is going to be a Zoom meeting too. So that's the way we're structuring. We need to give people plenty of time, and we don't want to start something and then have to switch it at the very last minute.
What are we bringing up? Is that the Sagewood?
Yeah.
So we're gonna have a lot of people, so that's all gonna be Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, I thought we had maybe talked about going over there to,
Well, the question is whether we can. We can't right now.
Okay.
And so I'd rather spend the time getting out the right information.
yes, well then, I needed to be clear, because I
Yeah.
was thinking we were going there, so.
Yeah.
So May 18th, we're gonna be basically the same setup, and, we're probably gonna have a few more, people zooming in at the meeting though.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that we get all the information out, but I just want to make sure we don't confuse people during this time.
Right, and we did have that a little bit on our last, on the public assessment hearing, so. All right, so June 18th, we're in the same mode, and then at that.
May 18th.
What'd I say?
June.
May 18th, I'm sorry, May 18th, we're in the same mode, we're right here, and then we will, hopefully that night, have a good idea what our next direction is. But we still could end up, going over to the community center, even if we're meeting just for the social distancing aspect, and we could have multiple meetings there, just depending what happens on the 18th, so. I just want to be clear on that, and then our next meeting, I think after that is June 1st, so.
Is it
all
community
right.
center or event center?
Event center.
Oh, God, I'm
Event
really
center.
screwing up. Event center, sorry. Sorry. All right, that's it. Anything last call? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Hatfield, second by
Hubbard.
Second by Councilmember Hubbard. Roll call. Hubbard.
Yeah.
Wong.
Aye.
Hatfield.
Yep.
Gra.
Aye.
Windshuttle. Aye. All right, we are adjourned at 9:45, and we're gonna have probably a 2-minute delay, and we have a really short EDA meeting following. So we'll see you in a couple minutes.
Yep. I think they're just turning their video off for the moment. There's like if you go to that bottom of the screen, there's a little video icon. So you can only turn off one of yours. You're on camera twice. Well, the iPad's more for you, I think. So you can see everybody. Yeah. Yeah, so here's one of the quotes from that story. It says, "You come here," this is about Veterans Park. "You come here and you read the quotes and you can see that there are people who have come before me and paved the way. And maybe one day one of my quotes can be up here."
Come on back. One.
There you go.
Ooh, there we're all back. All right, so we're good, Mike? Yes. All right, we'll go ahead and call the Chaska Economic Development Authority meeting for May 4th. We'll call it to order at 9:47. We'll call roll. Commissioner Gra.
Here.
Commissioner Wong.
Here.
Commissioner Hatfield.
Here.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Here.
President Windshuttle here. All right, next, I need, if there are no corrections or additions to the agenda, I would entertain a motion.
So moved by Wong.
I have a motion by Commissioner Wong,
Second.
second by Commissioner Gra. Discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Wong?
Aye.
Commissioner Hatfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Hubbard?
Yes.
Commissioner Gra?
Yes.
President Winchell, yes. Moves us to approving previous meeting minutes. Again, if there are no corrections or additions, I'd entertain a motion.
Moved by Hatfield.
So motion by Hatfield, second by Hubbard, was that?
Yes,
We both nodding? I thought I heard two voices, so,
but sure, I'll second that.
good. Good call. Discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Wong?
Aye.
Commissioner Hatfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Hubbard?
Yes.
Commissioner Gra?
Aye.
President Winchell, aye. Moves us to item 5, adopt resolution EDA 2020-5, adopt resolution to establish parameters for sale and issuance of bonds.
Mr. President, Commission members, the item in front of you tonight has to do with property that we needed to purchase to be able to make the connection of Savannah Way up to Creek Road. The parcel is known as the Cottrell parcel. Myron Cottrell used to live on that parcel and recently passed away. The parcel is the main connection that allows us to carry Savannah Way up to the north and then be able to eventually connect it up to, eventually up to Clover Ridge Drive to the north. So it's a very key parcel to deal with our transportation plan. We did purchase the parcel, about a month ago or so, and we did pass a bonding reimbursement resolution that basically allowed us to use cash on hand to go through the purchase, and then we'll be reimbursing ourselves with bond proceeds when we go out to sell bonds. We are recommending that we do a negotiated sale and that we have the EDA established parameters by which we'd make a decision about whether we would or would not move forward with actual sale of the bonds. We do think during this time period that a negotiated sale is best because there's real uncertainty in the market right now, so a negotiated sale would probably serve us best. The structure of this would be that the city owns the parcel now. We'd actually transfer it to our EDA, and then the city would have basically repurchase the parcel over a 20-year period by paying off these bonds. This is a taxable bond, and the reason it's taxable is because I'd say about a third of the parcel that we purchased we're going to end up reselling to the developer that's on just north, or I guess it's not north. North isn't necessarily up. South of the Cottrell parcel, where ponding needs to go for the road and then also for that development up there. So that'll be a way for us to recoup some of the cost of actually purchasing that parcel, but because it is something that we're going to be able to recoup some costs on, it does have to be a taxable versus a non-taxable issue. So in it, you can see that the estimated true interest cost of the negotiation is estimated to be 4.1, and that the draft parameter resolution would basically establish a maximum tax or a true interest cost of 4.25% and a maximum par amount to the bonds of $1.7 million. We are hoping to do the final pricing in the very beginning of June and then be able to bring back for adoption at the June 22nd meeting the results of that sale. Now, the one thing, and we talked about this the last time we went through a bonding process like this, is if we're going to go out and negotiate something like this, which we think this is the best thing to do now, we have to really be committing at this time that we're gonna actually go out and actually, if we get if we get the pricing within these parameters, that we're gonna accept it. Does not put us in a good position in the market if we go out and create a parameters resolution, somebody provides it to us, we come back to the council and then they don't accept it, because it sets a bad precedent for the future as far as our ability to negotiate these. And in times like this, negotiating this type of sale is definitely our best option to do. So I would say, if we meet the parameters, we'd say that this is something that we'd say that the council really would need to be committed to move forward with at that June 22nd meeting. Obviously, if we didn't meet the parameters, then we'd be coming back to the council with either a different recommendation to go or where we're at in the market and a recommendation whether or not to go. But basically, this sets the parameters, and if we're able to meet them, then basically tells the people purchasing these bonds that we're going to commit to this sale. So staff is recommending this. Ultimately, these bonds get repaid through two sources. One is our municipal state aid payments that we receive, and the second one is we do have a transportation fee. It's an assessment within the Southwest Chaska area that goes towards our overall transportation system. So with that being said, staff is recommending adoption of resolution number 2020-05, which is both relating to the purchase of the city land, authorizing installment purchase agreement for the sale of the land back to the city, and then the issuance of the authority's taxable full-term installment purchase revenue bonds, Series 2020B, and then approving and authorizing the execution of those documents necessary to move forward with that. So if you have any questions, I certainly be happy to answer them.
Questions for Matt? So the property in the west then stays there, correct? That other house?
Yes.
We won't be interfering there at all?
That's the one to the north, right?
Well, I kind of call it west.
What, yeah.
Toward Buconia.
We have an issue that we have to deal with them on an access easement that exists on the control property that we need to deal with them because it gets taken out as part of the construction project, but the actual property itself we don't touch.
Okay, and we haven't had any concerns with us putting a road next to them now?
No, that's not the concern.
There are other concerns.
Yeah, I mean, there's a handshake agreement that was done for an access easement over the property years ago, and sometimes handshake agreements are not the easiest to work through.
I don't get what the easement is.
They have a shed on the south side of their property that basically Cottrell's property had a driveway to access it. It's a 2-level building, and the bottom level is access from the Cottrell property. We'll get it worked out, but that's the house itself and everything will stay there.
Okay. All right. And like Matt said, this is that link to tie Southwest Chaska to bring them back up to like Engler Boulevard and access, another access to 212 to go both ways there. So I know this has been in the works a long time, and
yeah, again, we've already purchased the property.
Yep.
This is just mainly reimbursing ourselves with bond proceeds. So as the money comes in from our MSA and as it comes in from transportation fee, we don't have to carry that cash. We're able to restore our cash from the purchase and then be able to pay it with these revenues